Douluo, my Sharingan isn't very proper. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement, this story is 100% epic fiction. So please don't attempt real magic, the results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Chapter 851 Annihilation. Yichu noticed that Ulina's current speed was even faster than her previous fastest speed. Although she wasn't using any soul skills, her current speed was definitely no less than that of a speed-type soul master of the same level. However, Yichu knew very well that she was clearly a controlled-type soul master. It seemed that Ulina was truly enraged. Whoosh! Ulina's foxtail rose high, its length extending again to 5 meters. Moreover, every hair on the tail, which hadn't seemed particularly thick before, now stood upright, like steel needles. It looked like a giant 5-meter-long spiked club. She rushed swiftly to the narrow path that was being gnawed at. Ulina's body flickered like an illusion, her foxtail sweeping out horizontally. And her foxtail actually generated a terrifying power that surprised even Yichu. Wherever it passed, blood-red bats were scattered in all directions. Any blood-red bat struck by it had its body shattered like a broken rag doll, exploding in midair. Without pausing, Ulina used her terrifying tail to sweep away blood bats like dust from the ground. While the bats devoured quickly, Ulina's sweeping speed was even faster. In the blink of an eye, at least 100 blood bats had been shattered and killed in the wake of her fiery red figure. Not to mention blood bats, even the small golden bats that the dark gold three-headed bat had transformed into would be sent flying dozens of meters if struck by her. Although their bodies were much tougher and wouldn't shatter, they would be dazed and unable to approach Ulina. That was the power of her external soul bone. In terms of offensive power, her 5-meter-long foxtail could only be described as terrifying. Screams rang out. The remaining blood bats that were still gnawing quickly took flight, no longer daring to continue their attack. But despite this, in just a short while, Ulina had whipped twice as many blood-red bats to death as Yichu had previously shot. A thick killing intent emanated from Ulina. Seeing that the threat of the blood-red bats was gone, she stood there, panting heavily. Clearly, the recent slaughter had taken a toll on her. Yichu quickly approached to within 10 meters of Ulina's back, leaving a gap, a perfect position that wouldn't interfere with the output of Ulina's foxtail attack. With a bang, golden mist surged, and the small golden bats reassembled, transforming once more into a dark gold three-headed bat. No. It should be called the dark gold three-headed bat king. 3 heads and 6 small eyes stared fiercely at Yichu and Ulina. Clearly, it was also enraged. Seeing so many of its minions killed or wounded, eerie screams rang out simultaneously from the 3 heads of the dark gold three-headed bat king. Ulina's expression changed. Yichu, he said in a deep voice, it seems to be about to unleash some powerful skill. At this moment, the dark gold three-headed bat king was a full 50 meters away from them. This was a distance that Yichu's ordinary hidden weapons couldn't reach, and that Ulina couldn't use to launch an attack. Yichu, relying on the powerful perception of his eternal Mangekyou Sharingan, frowned and said, this guy has regenerative abilities, the skill it's using now is probably to amplify itself. Ulina looked troubled. If it completes its amplification, we'll be in trouble, but we can't find its vital point, Yichu said calmly. Its vital point should still be those 3 heads, although it can regenerate, I don't believe that it can grow back after all 3 heads are shattered at the same time. Without heads, how will it devour its own minions? As he spoke, Yichu took out his huge crossbow from his soul tool. Ulina looked at Yichu in confusion, not knowing what he was doing. Yichu's gaze sharpened as he said to Ulina, tie the rope to my feet, and the other end to your tail. Then throw me as close to it as possible. The closer we are, the more likely I am to destroy it completely, Ulina exclaimed in surprise. Yichu, isn't that too dangerous? Trust me, Yichu said with a smile, tying the rope around his ankle. All right, Ulina replied reluctantly, but she did as Yichu instructed. The dark gold three-headed bat king's cries grew louder and louder, its light becoming increasingly dazzling. Yichu roared, attack! Ulina's foxtail suddenly wrapped around Yichu's waist, and she threw him out with force. Only by experiencing it firsthand could one truly understand how powerful Hulina's foxtail was. A 5-meter-long foxtail and a 7-meter-long rope, with 10 meters remaining after the length tied at both ends, instantly closed the distance between Yichu and the dark gold three-headed Bat King to within 40 meters. Hulina watched Yichu's actions intently. She saw Yichu raise this huge crossbow in his right hand, and with a clang, 16 cold beams shot out, heading straight for the right head of the dark gold three-headed Bat King. At the same time, Yichu's left hand moved. The forging hammer spun rapidly, arcing towards the monster's left head. Just as Hulina was guessing what method Yichu would use to attack the central head of the dark gold three-headed Bat King, a flash of bloodlust appeared in Yichu's eyes. The Bat King's body suddenly became chaotic, its three heads seemingly out of sync, frozen in midair. Yichu's blue-silver emperor sword extended, enveloping the forging hammer. Before striking, Yichu had already considered the situation. The dark gold three-headed Bat King's distance before initiating its incantation clearly indicated that its body was not in its optimal defensive state during the incantation. Boom, boom, without a doubt, the two bat heads struck by the forging hammer exploded one after the other. The dark gold three-headed Bat King didn't even have time to scream. Its last head had already been pierced by 16 iron crossbow bolts. To Hulina's astonishment, Yichu's blue-silver emperor-bound forging hammer, after shattering two bat heads, spun again and struck the bat head pierced by this huge divine crossbow. The bat head, already riddled with holes, was reduced to dust and shattered completely, giving the opponent no chance to survive. Golden light instantly spread. With a bang, a large amount of golden liquid scattered in all directions. Any bloodbath splashed by the golden liquid instantly perished with screams. Yichu felt a sudden tightening on his feet. His body had been pulled into the air by Hulina's enormous foxtail, landing steadily on the narrow path. Their eyes met, and Hulina smiled sweetly at Yichu. Yichu's gaze was full of tenderness. With the dark gold three-headed Bat King dead, the other bloodbats were immediately leaderless. In a near retaliatory frenzy, it charged towards Yichu and Hulina. Chapter 852. Should we relax a bit? The remaining bats were leaderless. They had lost both morale and their commanding mind. Although their numbers remained considerable, they posed no further threat to Yichu and Hulina. Yichu's fingers moved rhythmically. Each golden beam he fired took the life of a blood bat. Hulina was even more direct. Her 5-meter-long foxtail lashed out like a swatter, constantly swatting away the bloodbats that approached her. The power of her foxtail was immense. With each swing, striking the bloodbats, those ferocious creatures instantly turned into a rain of blood. Strangely, Hulina's foxtail seemed to possess a special energy layer, untouched by any blood. Her large, furry tail, each hair standing on end like a steel needle, was a super weapon resembling a giant spiked club. Its destructive power against the swarm of blood bats was no less than that of Yichu wielding his dragon whisker needles. Finally, the last blood bat was struck by Yichu's attack, then whipped far away by Hulina's foxtail, and the surroundings returned to silence. Wiping the sweat from her brow, Hulina looked at Yichu, a hint of joy on her pretty face. Yichu smiled back at her. Defeating this swarm of bats was clearly not the achievement of any one of them alone, but rather the result of their combined efforts. Without Hulina's foxtail ensuring safety on the narrow path, Yichu would have found it extremely difficult to deal with the entire bat swarm. Similarly, without Yichu killing the dark gold three-headed Bat King, they would have undoubtedly endured the most terrifying attack from their opponent. Yichu tied up the rope and handed one end to Hulina. Want to rest for a while? Hulina reached out and took the rope, quickly tying it around her waist, letting out a long sigh. That was really dangerous just now. As she spoke, Hulina patted her ample chest, instantly creating a surge of waves. Her attire was quite revealing, making Yichu roll his eyes. With a gentle smile, Hulina took small steps closer, grasped Yichu's hand, and placed it on her full breasts, saying shyly, "Yichu, do you want to relax a little?" Yichu frowned slightly, but his hand gave her a couple of firm squeezes. "Alright, if you don't need to rest, let's continue." As he spoke, Yichu flicked his wrist, springing up amidst Hulina's soft cry. He landed back in front of her. Ugh! Hulina clutched her body, feeling weak, but dared not provoke him further. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to walk properly. The massive guardian transformed into orange-red light and quietly merged back into Hulina's body. A trace of fatigue was barely visible on her face. "Yichu, let's rest for a while." We've both exhausted quite a bit, and we don't know what we'll face next. As far as I know, this hell road has 3 trials, each more difficult than the last. We should consider this the first trial." Xiao paused, understanding that Hulina must have a specific reason for her actions. Although he had been the main attacker, he actually consumed far less soul power than Hulina. The blessing of the goddess of life and the enhanced blue-silver emperor bloodline greatly improved his recovery ability. It was only in the city of slaughter that he couldn't attach soul rings, otherwise, he could have done even better. "Let's rest for a while." Xiao and Hulina barely managed to sit down on the narrow path, back to back, observing the movements around them. They immediately entered a state of cultivation, quietly recovering their strength. Of course, their minds weren't completely immersed in cultivation. They both retained a portion of their consciousness to be vigilant about anything that might happen around them. An hour later, the two opened their eyes almost simultaneously. They each took out the food and water they carried in their soul tools, ate a little, and then got up again to continue forward. Yichu's speed noticeably increased as they moved forward again. With Hulina as a teammate, he could completely rest assured about the safety behind him. The air became increasingly scorching. Gradually, even Hulina could vaguely see the dark red flowing below the abyss on both sides. The air, growing increasingly scorching, made breathing difficult, as if one's lungs were on fire. As they walked, Yichu voiced his observation. "This hell road seems to spiral downwards. It shouldn't be a straight line. Otherwise, we should have already left the Slaughter City's territory. It's just that its curvature isn't very pronounced, so it's not easily noticeable," Hulina said. "Should we rest a bit more? It's too hot. I feel my energy draining rapidly." Yichu didn't answer. A pale blue light emanated from him again, this time enveloping only himself and Hulina. Instantly, a cool sensation spread throughout their bodies, and the surroundings became refreshingly clear. Not only did the temperature drop significantly, but even the scorching, murky air became pure, as if filtered by the blue light. Hulina secretly admired this. A flash of bloodlust crossed Yichu's eyes, and his expression immediately turned serious. "Nana, there are soul beasts ahead. Be careful." Soul beasts. Hulina looked ahead but saw no sign of any soul beasts. But she had no doubts. She simply nodded seriously. Yichu's eternal kaleidoscope clearly saw the 10-headed fiery sun serpent. Sure enough, not long after, a rustling sound came from ahead, causing Yichu and Hulina to stop simultaneously. Yichu didn't turn around, but simply gestured to Hulina. Sharp twin swords instantly appeared in Hulina's hands. At this moment, she still couldn't see the enemy, but she believed that Yichu, with his amazing vision, must have already clearly seen its location. That's right, Yichu had already seen the enemy. It was a pair of fiery red eyes. Right ahead on the narrow path, a dark red body was crawling there. The body was huge, its entire body coiled around the narrow path. Its eyes weren't particularly large. But the light in those eyes was even more terrifying than the previous dark gold 3-headed Bat King. "It's a snake," Yichu whispered a reminder. Accompanied by the rustling sound, the dark red snake began to slowly move forward. As it got closer, Hulina finally saw it more clearly. 9 bulges adorned the snake's head and back. Each bulge resembled a bright red mushroom, seemingly teeming with blood. The snake's abdomen was exceptionally large, bulging in the narrow passage, and its length exceeded 10 meters. They saw the strange snake, and the strange snake clearly saw them too. Its tongue, which had been lying prone on the narrow passage, slowly rose. Its pair of golden red eyes instantly shone as brightly as lanterns. Hulina didn't recognize this creature, it wasn't mentioned in any records of soul beasts. But Yichu understood. This strange beast differed from soul beasts in one crucial way. It didn't produce soul rings. Chapter 853 10-headed fiery sun serpent. As the strange snake continued its forward movement, an invisible pressure began to spread. Although the bloodbat's aerial attacks had caused Yichu and his companion considerable trouble, the real crisis arose when the bloodbats attempted to cut off their path. Now, the strange snake blocked their way. Undoubtedly, it could easily destroy the narrow path. Therefore, if the two wanted to attack the snake, they had to consider minimizing damage to the path during their attack. The distance began to close from 100 meters away. The strange snake emitted a hissing sound, like a baby crying. The 9 fleshy growths on its back began to glow with a golden red light high. 20 meters from Yichu, the strange snake launched its attack. A fiery red light suddenly spewed from its mouth, carrying a strong stench, and rapidly spread towards the two. What shocked and angered Yichu and Hulina even more was that this flame was coming close to the ground, meaning it was rapidly spreading from the narrow path beneath their feet. On flat ground, they could easily dodge, but in this situation, evasion was impossible. The fiery red light fluctuated violently on the narrow path, even crackling like burning rocks. Even more terrifying was the faint red mist accompanying the light. It was obvious that this mist contained potent toxins. Taking a deep breath, Yichu produced a Rasengan, a weapon he hadn't used in a long time. His eyes narrowed slightly. He quickly stepped forward with his right leg, bent his left leg, and spun the Rasengan in his hand. It slid from his palm, skimming the ground. The Rasengan encountered the fiery red light. Its rotation instantly created a whirlwind, like a tornado, swirling the light around it. Wherever it passed, the flames vanished. And with incredible speed, it hurtled towards the strange snake along the narrow path. A bizarre scene unfolded. The snake didn't directly collide with the Rasengan. Just as the Rasengan was about to reach it, the snake bowed its head. It actually fell from the narrow path into the abyss beside it. Just as the Rasengan had passed where its body had been, its head coiled back onto the narrow path, and its body repeated the same process, miraculously dodging Yichu's attack. Although the flames disappeared, the sweet, fishy-smelling mist had already begun to spread. HMPH, Yichu snorted disdainfully. A large leather pouch appeared in his hand. With a flick of his wrist, the pouch flew out, heading straight for the center of the poisonous mist. Immediately afterward, he threw out the realgar he had previously taken out with his other hand. The realgar was shattered in mid-air by the hidden force Yichu had left on it, turning into countless powders that scattered. Some of these powders struck the pouch first. Instantly, a large amount of liquid sprayed out, merging with the broken realgar powder to form a curtain of realgar liquid. Although Yichu also felt that Tang San's method working in a fantasy world was somewhat absurd. Since Tang San could easily destroy Du Yuyan's highly poisonous soul skill using a similar method in the original story, this strange snake, though far superior to Du Yuyan, was still a snake. Snake venom would inevitably be suppressed by realgar. While it might not be able to cure the poison, blocking it as Yichu was doing was entirely possible. Sure enough, the red poisonous mist vanished instantly where the water curtain passed. And some realgar wine even landed on the strange snake. But to Yichu's surprise, the strange snake seemed unaffected, seemingly unharmed. However, its massive body suddenly accelerated, charging towards Yichu and Hulina. Yichu produced another Rasengan the size of a soccer ball in his hand. He suddenly untied the rope around his waist and said in a deep voice, "Nana, stay where you are." After saying this, Yichu's body surged forward, rushing towards the strange snake. But he only took 3 steps. As he took his third step, he raised the hand holding the Rasengan. He half-turned his body and threw the Rasengan directly. Yichu's attack wasn't a booming, rapidly approaching giant serpent, but rather an upward strike into the air. Immediately afterward, Hulina, standing in place, witnessed a strange sight. A forging hammer suddenly appeared in Yichu's hand. Yichu's body spun rapidly like a top that had suddenly accelerated. She could only vaguely make out that with each spin, the hammer in his hand would strike. The aura emanating from his body was increasing exponentially, like a giant vortex constantly expanding. What impressed Hulina most was that, amidst such rapid spinning, Yichu's balance remained perfectly intact. His feet remained firmly planted on the narrow path. Little did she know that Yichu was now using the chaotic cloak hammer technique of the clear sky sect. With each spin, Yichu's feet landed on the same point with the same force. The monstrous snake dodged the Rasengan again, its body rapidly closing in. Suddenly, it repeated its trick, its upper body swaying to create a narrow path. It seemed to be trying to bypass Yichu. Given its previous 2 dodges of the Rasengan, this was clearly within its capabilities. It seemed to have sensed Yichu's formidable nature and wanted to attack Hulina first. Hulina stood with her short sword drawn to her chest, her feet crossed, toes pointing in different directions, ready to meet the attack. However, to her surprise, the monstrous snake failed to bypass Yichu. Just as its massive body swayed out of the narrow path, attempting to pass beneath Yichu's feet, suddenly, an immense force pulled its body back above the path. Its more than 10-meter-long body was flung high into the air, pulled backward by dozens of blue-silver royal tendrils. This monstrous snake's body was as thick as a bucket. How heavy was such a massive body? Moreover, Its strength was terrifying. The sheer pressure of its aura alone was enough to tell it was far more powerful than the previous dark gold three-headed Bat King. Yet, even so, it couldn't gain favor with Yichu and was even thrown back by the vines. Where did Yichu get such power? Hulina stared in adoration at the man not far from her. She noticed that the blue-silver emperor aura that had previously emanated from Yichu had completely vanished. The strange snake was clearly enraged. It no longer tried to bypass Yichu. With a flick of its massive body, it turned around, and a 3-meter-long tail lashed out directly at Yichu. Chapter 854 Inner Alchemy. The 10-headed fiery sun serpent's target wasn't Yichu's body, but rather the narrow path a meter in front of him. It clearly intended to break Yichu's balance this way. However, the forging hammer in Yichu's hand had already unleashed a black wave of energy, covering a wider area than it had anticipated. Before the serpent's tail could even fall, it was caught, lifting the entire serpent into the air. Had it not used its tail to entangle the narrow path in time, it would likely have fallen. Fear finally surfaced in its golden red eyes. The 9 golden red growths on the serpent's back also shone even brighter. Pai, it seemed to be hissing angrily. Its body arched along the narrow path, the 9 growths aimed directly at Yichu. Suddenly, the 9 growths shattered simultaneously. 9 streams of golden red liquid shot out, not directly through the air, but rather upwards and in front of Yichu. 9 streams of liquid merged into one in mid-air, pausing abruptly just before reaching Yichu. All the liquids simultaneously contracted, transforming into a small, golden red sphere no bigger than a fist. Only then did it crash down upon Yichu. At that moment, Yichu, who had been spinning continuously, suddenly stopped. His movements shifted from extreme motion to extreme stillness. The contrast between movement and stillness was incredibly eerie. In that instant of stillness, the 500-pound forging hammer he held remained in a forward-sloping position. A terrifying scene unfolded before Hulina's eyes. The forging hammer was now imbued with Yichu's soul power, and at the hammer head, she seemed to see a gigantic black dragon rising from it. Then, the black dragon instantly opened its maw, revealing a continuously spinning, compressed Rasengan. Boom! The Rasengan slammed into the golden red sphere. The sphere, which was about to fall, trembled violently, as if struggling. But its struggle lasted only a moment. The next instant, it shot into the sky. The Rasengan, compressed from most of Yichu's soul power, shot out and didn't stop, continuing to glide along the narrow path. This time, the giant snake had no chance to dodge, as the distance the Rasengan had traveled far exceeded its body length. Swoosh! The compressed Rasengan caused the giant snake's body to suddenly stop, sinking into silence within its body. It vanished without a trace in the silent darkness, without any grand, resounding sound. Hulina watched warily ahead. Yichu inhaled, gradually calming down and immediately retracting his hammer. Just as Hulina was about to ask Yichu if he needed help, she suddenly saw an extremely terrifying sight. The giant snake, which had previously unleashed a powerful aura, seemingly intent on annihilating them, had changed. The part of its massive body above the narrow path was silently disappearing, turning into fine dust that slid down. The lower part of its body, having lost its support, broke into several pieces, simultaneously plummeting towards the abyss. Yichu, how did you do that? Hulina knew she shouldn't be asking Yichu at this time, but she couldn't help herself and asked anyway. Yichu smiled, turned around, shrugged, and said casually, "Can't you tell? Strength, haha." Hulina rolled her eyes, but her eyes held approval and joy. Yichu raised his head, blood-red light shooting from his eyes as he looked upwards. A golden red dot descended from the sky. With a wave of his right hand, Yichu drew the golden red light into his palm under an invisible suction force. It was none other than the small golden red ball formed from the liquid that had condensed from the 9 tumors of the strange snake earlier. "Be careful, it might be poisonous," Hulina warned anxiously, not having time to process Yichu's words. Yichu shook his head. "It's alright. Although it's poisonous, it's harmless to me." Yichu ran his hand that had caught a golden red ball over his soul tool and stored it away. "Aren't you afraid it will explode?" Hulina stepped forward, coming up behind Yichu. Yichu shook his head, not hiding anything from Hulina. "This is the snake's inner core. Having lost the control of its original body, it can no longer explode. You know that snake?" Hulina's voice was filled with disbelief. Yichu nodded silently. "That's right. Actually, This snake doesn't belong to the soul beasts of this world, it's a primordial beast, the 10-headed fiery sun serpent. It's incredibly venomous. Adults can exceed 10 meters in length, possessing the strongest fire poison among snakes. It takes 10,000 years of cultivation to form an inner core, hidden among its 9 heads. When the inner core emerges, the world loses its color, and all snakes flee in terror. It is the supreme being among snakes. What Xiao obtained was undoubtedly the inner core of the 10-headed fiery sun serpent. Even a Rasengan compressed with half his soul power and infused with the power of the chaotic cloak couldn't compare to the explosive force of this inner core. However, Xiao's mental strength was also extremely powerful. It had probably already surpassed the limits of a soul Douluo. As the Rasengan hurtled forth, Xiao, relying on his precise mental lock, adjusted his attack to a diagonal upward. He didn't actually collide with the inner core. Instead, he instantly severed the connection between the inner core and the 10-headed fiery sun serpent, releasing the inner core. The 10-headed fiery sun serpent's defense was already significantly weakened. How could it possibly withstand Xiao's domineering attack with a clear sky hammer? Its body was instantly shredded into dust. The benefits of the 10-headed fiery sun serpent's inner core were certainly not limited to its supreme power among snakes. It also had many other uses. Having obtained it, Xiao's mood was beyond description, exhilarated. Coincidentally, Erlong was of the fire attribute. He had previously tried to give her the Rooster Crest Phoenix Sunflower, but she refused. Now, surely she would accept this in her core? So, from now on, soul masters with snake-type martial souls will have a hard time getting along with you. Although Helena couldn't see the smile on Xiao's face, she guessed that the inner core must be very important to him. Xiao killed the 10-headed fiery sun serpent. It's normal for him to take its inner core. Besides, even she herself had fallen for Xiao, so she didn't mind such a thing at all. Xiao smiled and said, "You could say that." Helena didn't dwell on the matter. The two rested for a while. Within Xiao's blue domain, the surrounding murky air was effectively filtered, and the two quickly recovered their strength. They passed 2 trials without any major incidents. Their mindsets became more relaxed. They maintained a steady pace and moved forward. If this hell road really only had 3 trials, then they only needed to pass the final test to leave this damned place. Chapter 855 The End. The temperature continued to rise. The dark red liquid flowing in the abyss on both sides gradually became clearer. The terrain seemed to be descending continuously. Perhaps others didn't understand the true situation in the city of slaughter. Xiao, however, vaguely guessed that there was a mountain behind the town he and Ling Yuan had entered. Perhaps the city of slaughter wasn't underground, but in the mountains. This thought only flashed through his mind. At this moment, what was more important for him and Helena was to leave this place as soon as possible. As for everything else, there would be plenty of time to judge later. The temperature changes outside were gradually becoming unstoppable by the blue-silver domain. Xiao's blue-silver domain was more effective at filtering the air. With a life force contained within it, it slightly adjusted the air temperature within the domain. It wasn't a true isolation. Therefore, as they moved forward, the scorching heat they experienced gradually increased. What made it even more difficult for them to adapt was that there seemed to be a special atmosphere in the air. The oppressive feeling became increasingly obvious deep within their hearts, and their own killing intent was released more recklessly. A growing sense of unease crept in, especially from Helena, who was walking behind Xiao. She didn't possess Xiao's powerful mental fortitude to control her emotions. Later, whenever a murderous aura stirred, it would flare up in front of Xiao. Under his ministrations, it would release and bring a brief period of clarity. But in this situation, that was clearly impossible. With increasing agitation, her murderous aura intensified. Everything before her seemed blurry. The surrounding heat seemed to stimulate every cell in her body. Xiao wasn't having an easy time either. Although his situation was somewhat better than Helena's, the external heat was like a lure to the murderous aura within them, yet they couldn't stop it from escaping. Otherwise, they would inevitably be devoured by the terrifying evil energy of this hellish path. Gradually, Xiao understood. Since he and Helena entered this hellish path, they had been constantly affected by its aura. While murderous aura could block this evil energy, it couldn't completely filter it. Thinking this, Xiao realized that he and Helena had miscalculated. Passing this hell road required more than just sufficient strength, it also required traversing it in the shortest possible time. The longer they stayed here, the deeper they would be affected by the evil aura. Once their minds were disturbed, they might never be able to escape. Nana, calm down. Let's speed up, Yichu called to Hulina behind him. Hulina, still managing to stay conscious, nodded vigorously at Yichu. The two no longer walked, but leaped into the air, rapidly moving forward. Their speed increased. Their approach to the abyss also increased. The air became noticeably hotter, and their vision became increasingly blurry. Even Yichu's eternal kaleidoscope was affected by the surrounding pale red mist, limiting his vision to only about a kilometer. In the abyss on either side of the narrow path, dark red liquid churned and flowed. Yes, it was blood. Yet, the blood-smelling liquid possessed the temperature of magma. Yichu, I can't hold on any longer. Hulina's pace gradually slowed. A murderous intent surged within her. A powerful urge to slaughter everything around her constantly eroding her heart. She knew that if she didn't stop, she might attack Yichu at any moment. Yichu stopped and turned to look at Hulina. At this moment, Hulina's entire body had turned pink. Her exposed skin, damp with sweat, emitted a faint fragrance and looked even smoother. Hulina's eyes were tightly closed. Her body was trembling uncontrollably. The white murderous aura surrounding her body was fluctuating irregularly. Yichu raised his hand and pressed it against Hulina's brow, channeling streams of cool energy into her mind. Nana, wake up, hold on. If I'm not mistaken, we're about to get out of here. At this moment, the dark red liquid on either side was only about 50 meters above the narrow path they were on. The scorching heat of the air had already caused Yichu and Hulina's clothes to emit a faint smell of burning. Yichu had taken the fiery apricot elixir. While she didn't feel much of a difference, Hulina was different. Most of her soul power was being used to withstand the terrifying heat, making it increasingly difficult to control her killing intent. With a whoosh, the massive foxtail shot out from behind Hulina's buttocks again. Although Yichu's help had brought her back to her senses somewhat, she was quickly overwhelmed by the killing intent aroused by the evil aura. She was on the verge of collapse. Seeing Hulina's pained expression, Yichu's heart sank. He knew that once Hulina went berserk, her first target would be him. Driven by killing intent, she might not be as agile as before. However, her attacks would inevitably become even more terrifying under the influence of the killing intent. Hulina's body trembled violently, causing waves of her buttocks and breasts to sway before Yichu's eyes. Yichu Nana, I'm sorry, you should sleep for a while. By the time you wake up, we'll be out. Yichu suddenly stepped forward. The eternal kaleidoscope in his eyes emitted a blood-red light as he met Hulina's gaze. The Sharingan's frivolous nature seemed to have restored some of Hulina's former self, though her eyes were now filled with lust. Yichu, I believe you, Hulina said without resistance, letting Yichu hypnotize her, softly collapsing into his arms. Yichu held Hulina's delicate body, watching as her foxtail gradually retracted, revealing a large expanse of white skin beneath her torn hot pants. Yet, Yichu's mind remained undisturbed. His primary task now was to get Hulina out of there safely. Yichu held Hulina tightly, pressing her against his chest, blue light surging. Facing the unconscious Hulina, he no longer needed to hold back. Strands of blue-silver grass, resembling sapphires, silently appeared, binding Hulina's body tightly to his front. To prevent her from hindering his movements, Yichu wrapped her arms around his neck and raised her legs, wrapping them around his waist. Undoubtedly, their bodies were now in extremely close contact. The meager covering Hulina wore was practically non-existent. But Yichu forced himself to remain calm. He had to get her out of there. The first test of destruction was about to begin. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 856 Exit. Just as Yichu used blue-silver grass to gently wrap Hulina around himself, in a posture that wouldn't hinder his movements, he suddenly understood what the final challenge of the Hell Road truly was. It was still a powerful enemy, but no longer an external force. It was himself, his own inner demons. Under the influence of the immense evil aura, the scorching, malevolent blood, and his own overwhelming killing intent, how much willpower would it take to persevere and escape? Even a genius like Hulina couldn't hold out until the end. This was the most difficult challenge to overcome on the Hell Road. Thinking of this, Yichu couldn't help but marvel at his luck. His spiritual power was strong, and he possessed the blue-silver emperor bloodline. Fueled by the life-giving essence of the ancient tree of life from the goddess of life, even though Yichu hadn't reached the soul saint realm, his blue-silver domain had still entered the third stage, the myriad manifestations of the universe. This stage possessed assimilation and suppression properties. The suppression skill would suppress all martial soul attributes by 10%, including reducing soul power release by 10%. The longer one remained within the domain, the stronger the suppression effect would become. Although, here, the blue-silver domain couldn't unleash its full power. Or rather, the effects of the blue-silver domain itself had been suppressed to a very low level here. However, thanks to its ever-flowing domain aura, it could still help Yichu. As for the surrounding scorching heat, it was a joke to Yichu. Even the temperature of the ice and fire yin-yang well couldn't affect him, having consumed the fiery apricot and the eight-cornered profound ice grass, let alone here. The deadly poison in the blood plasma might affect Yichu, but he would never give this liquid a chance to touch him. Absorbing some diluted poison gas was completely unnecessary for Yichu, who possessed an immune constitution and had received the blessing of the goddess of life. In the year and a half he had spent in the city of slaughter, how could Yichu not have carefully studied Bloody Mary? The blood plasma here should be a concentrated mixture of the evil blood of countless fallen beings over the past 1,000 years, mixed with deadly poison. It could also be said to be the foundation of the city of slaughter. Looking at the blood pool below, Yichu shook his head. This place had its necessity. He stood up again and quickly rushed forward. His body rubbed against Tulina's body as they moved, generating waves of pleasure. Yet, at this moment, Yichu forcefully suppressed his thoughts, forcing images of bloody scenes from the city of slaughter to flood his mind. Only in this way could he barely resist the allure of the woman before him, a temptation far stronger than his killing intent. The air grew increasingly hot. Hulina's skin, bound before Yichu, had turned a rosy red. Fortunately, this was within Yichu's blue-silver domain, and coupled with her own formidable strength, far exceeding that of ordinary people, the scorching temperature alone would have been enough to bake her alive. Just as Yichu had predicted, with the increasing temperature and the rising blood plasma around him, he knew he was nearing the exit. Half an hour later, Yichu, his mind constantly stimulated by the frenzied killing intent, finally saw the exit. By this time, he was drenched in sweat. Not from the surrounding temperature, but from the combined effects of the killing intent and the terrifying beauty before him. Even with Yichu's unwavering will, he was on the verge of collapse under these circumstances. Just then, he saw the exit in the distance. The exit was exceptionally clear. White light condensed into an oval-shaped curtain of light. That was the end of Yichu's journey. However, 1,000 meters from the exit, Yichu stopped. His brow furrowed. The exit had appeared, but it was the exit to the other side. There was no way forward, only a sea of blood-red water. The blood plasma had coalesced into a small lake, blocking his path, bubbles churning within. The 1,000-meter distance seemed like an insurmountable chasm. There were no more attacks from any living creature. But the strongest evil energy contained here, and the vast chasm 1,000 meters wide before him, became an almost insurmountable barrier. He supported Hulina in front of him. His right hand inevitably touched her. Because Hulina had previously revealed her fox tail, and due to the bumpy road, the area of her lower body that could be covered was pitifully small. Under this double stimulation, at this moment, Yichu's eyes were filled with a primal, animalistic desire. He slowly closed his eyes and took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. His soul power circulated rapidly within him. Although his soul power hadn't increased significantly over the past year and a half of cultivation, his sustained combat ability was much stronger than before. A faint light flickered. The eternal kaleidoscope in Yichu's eyes spun continuously. A faint spiritual fluctuation emanated from between his brows. At this point, he could no longer hold back. He had to fully unleash his spiritual power, trying his best to control the killing intent emanating from him, forming a barrier against external attacks. This also allowed his mind to briefly regain clarity. With his mind clear, Yichu's first action was to observe his surroundings. He didn't overlook any detail or clue. On either side of the narrow path stretched a vast, seemingly endless expanse. 1,000 meters ahead lay the exit. Above, only the dark cave ceiling, about 200 meters high, could be vaguely seen. Yichu couldn't help but sigh inwardly. In comparison, seeking a way out from above is better. He raised his right hand. A blue-silver emperor appeared. Yi Chu flung his blue-silver emperor into the air. Although he couldn't use soul skills, he could still use his martial soul's physical form. The blue-silver emperor, now fully transformed into a god-level martial soul, was certainly not just a change in color and appearance. Previously, Yi Chu's blue-silver emperor could only fly a maximum of about 100 meters. But now, the blue-silver grass he threw flew at least 150 meters. Through sensing his own martial soul, Yi Chu quickly discovered that 170 meters was the limit his blue-silver grass could reach. From there, it was more than 200 meters from the cave ceiling. The blue-silver grass was only 170 meters away, still nearly 30 meters short. Looking at Hulina in his arms, Yi Chu considered whether to wake her. With her fox tail, this distance wouldn't be a problem at all. But he quickly rejected the idea. At this moment, Hulina's delicate skin was like a boiled shrimp, her whole body flushed red. What if he woke her up? If she attacked while in a daze, she wouldn't even have a chance. Thinking of this, Yi Chu completely dismissed his previous idea. Seeing the hidden arrow he had given Hulina on her wrist, Yi Chu remembered that he still had other unused hidden weapons lying in his soul tool. Chapter 857 Killing God Domain. Yi Chu retrieved the flying claw from his soul tool. He released 2 strands of blue-silver grass from his body, one tied to the flying claw, and the other hooked onto several control points of the flying claw. The flying claw's maximum range was 30 meters. If he could open it in the air, it would be equivalent to extending the blue-silver emperor's range by 30 meters, bringing the total length to over 200 meters. Moreover, with his own jumping ability, reaching the top was no problem at all. Thinking this, Yi Chu slowly inhaled and exhaled. He knew his chance was fleeting. Most of his power was used to suppress the killing intent, and now only by exerting his full strength could he ensure he could climb to the top of the cave. If he failed this time, it would undoubtedly be even more difficult to activate it while suppressing the killing intent again. Regulating his internal energy, Yi Chu's expression became solemn. He took another deep breath, and a faint blue light emanated from him, the full release of the blue-silver domain. Only within the blue-silver domain could the influence of the current environment be minimized. The next moment, Yi Chu, his body bent low, legs already embedded in the ground, tightly embraced Hulina. A faint white light swirled around him. Yi Chu's eyes suddenly sharpened, and he abruptly lowered himself, almost touching the narrow path below. Terrifying power was unleashed almost instantly. Whoosh! Yi Chu's body sprang into the air. The astonishing jumping force made Yi Chu clearly feel the surrounding scenery rushing past. He watched as the narrow path below grew smaller and smaller, and his speed in the air gradually decreased. He knew he was about to reach the highest point of his jump. At this moment, with his Huan Gong fully activated, and with his back to the cave ceiling, Yi Chu roughly knew how high he had jumped. His body flipped in the air. Yi Chu had already flung out a blue-silver grass that was wrapped around the flying claw. When he turned around, Yi Chu's tense mood had already relaxed. Because he clearly saw that he was less than 150 meters away from the cave ceiling. There was no suspense. In the blink of an eye, the blue-silver grass was almost at the cave ceiling. With a clang, Yi Chu used another strand of blue-silver grass wrapped around it to activate the mechanism of the flying claw. The sharp, pointed flying claw gripped the rock ceiling, suspending Yi Chu and Hulina in midair. He didn't need to exert any effort himself. Yi Chu quickly controlled the blue-silver grass to retract, bringing his body closer to the cave ceiling. Once he grasped the flying claw, he switched to its mechanism, pulling him to the dark rock wall at the top. Whoosh! The blue-silver emperor, glowing with red and blue light, appeared. Its tip turned to ice, and Yi Chu, controlling the blue-silver emperor like an octopus, pierced its tip into the rock wall, suspending Yi Chu and Hulina in midair. Only when the blue-silver emperor pierced the rock wall did Yi Chu finally relax. He knew he was finally safe. Staying here would only be asking for trouble. He regulated his soul power, enduring the pain caused by the continuous exertion of his mental energy. Yi Chu controlled the frost blue-silver emperor, hanging upside down from the cave ceiling, and quickly climbed outwards. The cave ceiling was uneven and pitted, but it posed no threat to Yi Chu in his current state. Hanging upside down from the cave ceiling, Yi Chu, as easily as walking on flat ground, traversed 1,000 meters, finally reaching the end. He climbed down. The entrance was right in front of him. Yi Chu suddenly realized that the killing intent around his body seemed to be drawn by a special force. He looked back one last time at the hell road he had just traversed. Yichu knew that the trials of the killing capital over the past year and a half were experiences he could never forget. With a whoosh, Yichu finally darted into the white light curtain. Everything around him seemed to be changing. The moment Yichu entered the white light curtain, he immediately felt as if his body had entered a special world. The surroundings were a snow-white void, and the blue-silver grass he released was restricted by a special force, forced back into his body. Hulina in front of him was also pulled away from his embrace. In this white world, he couldn't muster any strength, the only sensation was icy cold. It felt as if countless icy energies were converging upon him, while simultaneously releasing countless more from within. In this white void, Yichu could only endure the terrifying pain alone. The coldness that should have appeared still did. It wasn't a true change in temperature, but rather the chill brought by killing intent. The purest killing intent rapidly invaded Yichu's body. Each invasion made Yichu tremble. As the cold gradually stiffened his heart, his senses began to fade away along with his consciousness. And at this moment, Yichu finally understood that the origin of this killing city was indeed correct. This was a domain. A domain formed from condensed killing intent. Of course, this domain was far more powerful than his current blue-silver domain. Within the domain, he was like a rootless duckweed. He didn't know how much time had passed. When Yichu awoke from the pain, he felt as if he had been in a dream. His body lay amidst a patch of blue-silver grass. And these blue-silver grasses were transmitting a faint warmth and gentle caress into his body. All the pain had vanished. Only a feeling of complete comfort remained. The familiar fluctuations of soul power and the sensations of soul skills permeated his body once more. As he tried to sit up, Yichu noticed a heaviness in his left hand. Turning his head, he saw that he was actually holding a fox's milk in his left hand. When he saw Hulina, he was certain he wasn't dreaming. The soft touch was so real, so warm. Yichu didn't wake Hulina immediately. Instead, he examined the killing god domain he had acquired. Yichu closed his eyes, carefully examining his martial soul. In his inner vision, he noticed some new patterns that resembled the blood-red patterns on the surface of the Hell Slaughter arena when the Hell Road was activated. Only, they were much smaller and white. Because Yichu's martial soul was based on his eyes, the white patterns weren't clearly visible from the outside. When Yichu tried to sense the white patterns, in an instant, a surge of white light quietly spread out, emanating from Yichu's body. Soon, the light vanished, leaving no color. Yichu's perception of the surrounding world immediately changed. Even the blue-silver grass, his closest companions, trembled in this invisible current. The killing god domain. Was this the killing god domain? Just then, a majestic yet emotionless voice resounded in Yichu's mind. Chapter 858 The Second Trial of the 9 Trials of Destruction. 9 Trials of Destruction. First Trial, 100 win streak in the Hell Slaughter Arena of the Slaughter City, conquer the Hell Road, time limit, 2 years, completed, reward. 10% destruction origin affinity, all soul ring age increased by 10,000 years, a majestic voice echoed in his mind. Yichu unconsciously activated his eternal main Jekaiao Sharingan. Beneath him were 4 jet black soul rings. Golden power surged towards those soul rings, making the black even brighter. Breakthrough bottleneck, granted a divine soul ring. In an instant, another golden bead appeared before Yichu. Space distorted, and Yichu calmly stored the bead in his divine might space. He had also received one from Poseidon, so now he had 2 divine soul rings. The second of the 9 points of light between Yichu's brows lit up. 9 trials of destruction. Second trial, slay the king of slaughter, seize the Azure divine sword, mission time limit, 1 year. Hearing the second test in his mind, Yichu sat there dumbfounded, frowning. Was he facing the destruction god test or the Azure god test? Why had he gone to steal the Azure god sword? Yichu rubbed his aching head, deciding to stop thinking about what he couldn't understand. Those guys in the sky were probably plotting something. But for Tang Chen, Yichu had long planned to test his skills. The great Sumeru hammer of the Clear Sky sect was created by Tang Chen, and its profound technique, ring explosion, was passed down only through a single lineage. Only the sect leader's successor could cultivate it. The previous successor was Tang Hao, who was dead, and the great Sumeru hammer had been lost in the Clear Sky sect. However, Tang Chen still possessed it in his memories. With only a year, Yichu wasn't worried about not being able to handle Tang Chen. His current soul power level was at least level 66. Once he obtained his 5th and 6th soul rings, his soul power would undoubtedly reach level 70 in a very short time. He dreamed of obtaining the Susanoo. Only then could he stand tall under the heavens. Given Chang Chen's current state, Yichu felt he might be able to take him down single-handedly. Yichu Hulina, seemingly out of nowhere, had already clung to him, her warm, red lips pressing against Yichu's. Yichu didn't refuse. He had already checked when he activated his Sharingan, there was no one around. He slowly lowered his head and gently kissed the corner of Hulina's lips. Hulina blushed, shy yet proactive. Their lips met, and Hulina wrapped her arms around Yichu's neck, slowly swaying her head, their lips parting and closing. Yichu gently bit her delicate cherry lips. Hulina's face flushed, her throat bobbing, accepting whatever came her way. The large hands on her body made her heart pound, yet she only gave in to his desires, head held high, letting him do as he pleased. The heat rising from Yichu's body made Hulina feel hot all over, her delicate body becoming soft and yielding in the heat. After a long while, their lips parted. Yichu looked at the beautiful, fiery red fox cub before him, holding the twin pink and white kittens in his arms. He pulled Hulina, who was nestled in his embrace, close to her ear. "Nana, shouldn't you go back to the spirit hall?" Hulina nodded slightly, her breath warm against her skin as she softly said, "Yichu, why don't you come back with me?" "No, I need to see your other sisters." "We'll talk about the future later." Yichu shook his head. He needed to go to Seagood Island in Heavendao City to see if the situation in the Soul Master world had changed. "But what if I can't live without you?" Hulina watched the twin breasts bounce in Yichu's hands, biting her lips, her eyes filled with seductive allure. A burning sensation spread through Hulina's ear as Yichu's somewhat rough voice rang out. "Don't worry, I won't abandon you." Yichu began to caress her again. He brazenly raised his hand, covering her delicate body and kneading it, reaching under the fabric to warm it. Just as Yichu was about to pull Hulina, who was constantly grabbing his long legs, into the divine might space for a 7-in-7 out attack, he suddenly stopped what he was doing. His eyes flashed with a blood-red light as he looked towards the direction of the jungle. Hulina's eyes held a seductive allure, but also a murderous intent. She was never weak, it was just that her spiritual power was somewhat lacking compared to Yichu. Hulina's killing god domain immediately spread out. "Ling Yuan," Yichu was stunned. His Sharingan had already clearly seen the newcomer. "Sister Ling Yuan." The cold murderous intent in Hulina's eyes froze. Looking at the dark figure before her, she withdrew her killing god domain, which was filled with killing intent. "Yichu, Nana, do you intend to put on a live sex show for me here, with the sky as your blanket and the earth as your bed?" Ling Yuan Douluo looked at Hulina, whose clothes had already slipped off most of her body. Even now, Yichu's hand hadn't let go of her breasts. Hulina belatedly realized that she had almost exposed her breasts when she noticed a teasing look in Ling Yuan's eyes. She gasped and blushed as she began to straighten her clothes. Yichu also withdrew his hand and stood up, meeting Ling Yuan's flushed face and resentful gaze. Looking at her fiery body encased in leather armor, a hint of bloodlust flickered in his eyes. He slowly approached Ling Yuan. "Ling Yuan, do you remember what I said before I entered the city of slaughter?" Of course I remember." Ling Yuan Douluo blushed even more as Yichu approached, her heart pounding, revealing the shy demeanor of a young girl. I've been waiting for you here all this time, I know, so I'm fulfilling my promise now." To Hulina's astonishment, Yichu embraced Ling Yuan Douluo. "Sister Ling Yuan, what's going on?" Ling Yuan leaned against Yichu's chest, feeling the warm hand on her buttocks. Overwhelmed with shame, she no longer cared about the teasing she had shown Hulina earlier. Her face flushed, and her eyes shimmered. Don't play with me like this." Yichu held Ling Yuan Douluo's waist, his voice slightly hoarse. "Did you want me to play with you before?" With that, Yichu hugged Ling Yuan Douluo and captured her lips with his. Yichu held Ling Yuan Douluo's hand, kneading and shaping it. He held Ling Yuan's cherry lips, opening and closing them slightly. Her full red lips became luscious and slightly swollen. Ling Yuan tilted her pretty face up, her face flushed and her heart pounding, gradually becoming restless. Her two soft hands tightly gripped Yichu's collar, trying to pull him away. The black leather armor she wore, as Yichu pulled at it, revealed a hint of her narrow-mindedness. Yichu raised his left hand and reached out to grasp her. Hulina watched her elder, her hands damp with sweat, being completely taken from by Yichu in his arms, Her eyes filled with desire, and she couldn't help but swallow hard. She had endured for so long on the road to hell. Chapter 859 The external aid called by Bibi Dong. Ling Yuan collapsed into Yichu's arms, accepting his wet, slippery touch. Her throat bobbed, her lips parted. Yichu's right hand encircled Ling Yuan's waist, his fingertips flicking, the buttons falling off, feeling the restraints loosen. The constant searching within her armor made a rustling sound. Ling Yuan's heart tightened. She let out a soft moan, her proud breasts erect. After a while, Yichu finally lifted his head and released her luscious red lips. They were tugging at each other, glistening and tempting. Yichu's hand remained between her breasts, clenched in his palm, as if liquid was about to overflow from between his fingers. Ling Yuan trembled, her tongue lolling out as she breathed, carrying a strong, fragrant breath, her eyes hazy with intoxication. The still grabbing movements within her made her unable to stand upright. Yichu didn't control his strength. He simply and brutally released what had been suppressed within him for so long. Within the city of slaughter, in that inhuman place, even Yichu, with his powerful mental strength, was inevitably affected. It wasn't until he heard Hulina's voice that Yichu regained his senses slightly. He loosened his grip on Ling Yuan's voluptuous body. Yichu, you and Sister Ling Yuan. Hulina blushed crimson as she looked at Ling Yuan's flushed, even slightly purplish, body. Yichu's eyes held a hint of apology. A green light emanated from his hand as he covered Ling Yuan's body, gently stroking it for a moment until the marks in reddish-purple hues gradually disappeared. Only a faint blush remained, a manifestation of Ling Yuan's shyness and arousal. "I'm sorry, just now, and nothing." Ling Yuan's lips parted groggily, her voice trembling with a sob, making it impossible to discern whether it was pain or pleasure. Burying her head in Yichu's arms, she had finally found a man, had she? He tasted quite good, very much to her liking, and was strong enough to satisfy her in the future. She, who had been crouching in the corner for a long time, had already witnessed this. Yichu then turned his gaze to Hulina, put his arm around Ling Yuan, and explained, "As you can see, Ling Yuan will also be one of your sisters, Sister Ling Yuan, you actually." Hulina was stunned, looking at Ling Yuan Douluo with surprise. "When did this happen? There shouldn't be much interaction between Ling Yuan Douluo and Yichu, right?" In Hulina's view, they only met in Wuhan City, during the All-Continent Advanced Soul Master Academy Elite Tournament. Little did she know that, without her knowledge, Ling Yuan had already seen Yichu naked, and had watched a live sex show for who knows how long. Ling Yuan buried her head in Yichu's arms in shame. Having remained chaste for decades, after watching Yichu riding dragons, teasing cats, feeding rabbits, and poking snakes, her heart was already overflowing with lust. Until that time in the secret room, when she tried it, it was as if she had opened Pandora's box, and she could no longer restrain herself. With her sensitive constitution, even the slightest touch sent a warm current through her body. If she had the chance, she just wanted to dry herself off properly before standing here and talking business with Yichu. "Nana, since Ling Yuan is here too, I'll take you back to Wuhan City now. We'll meet again sometime," Yichu said, frowning slightly. Since leaving the city of slaughter, he seemed to have changed somewhat. He handled these matters with a newfound ease. "Okay, I understand." Hulina bit her red lips. She still wanted to spend a few more intimate hours with Yichu. However, she did indeed want to go home. "Yichu, I can't go back so soon." Ling Yuan suddenly lifted her head from Yichu's embrace, covering her open collar without removing Yichu's hand, slowly adjusting it. "Why? Do you have any other missions here?" Yichu withdrew his hand, casually taking a telomeres and twirling them, causing Ling Yuan to blush. Yichu glanced at his somewhat guilty hand. He seemed to have changed, becoming somewhat arrogant and uninhibited. Hulina stepped forward and gently took Yichu's hand, placing it on her lower back, letting him explore her shapely buttocks. Ling Yuan quickly composed herself, her eyes showing a hint of seriousness. "Danger asked me to help you complete the assessment, huh?" Yichu was stunned, his playful movements on Hulina's buttocks ceasing. He stared at Ling Yuan with surprise, asking, "Ling Yuan, what kind of assessment are you talking about?" Hulina blushed shyly, gently twisting her body and rubbing against Yichu's warm hand. Her alluring eyes, however, were also curiously fixed on Ling Yuan. Why would a teacher call Sister Ling Yuan over to help Yichu complete some task? "I don't know either, but Danger said you do. She said it's about dealing with a king of slaughter, and she asked me to accompany you." She has a way to help you complete the test. Ling Yuan straightened her clothes. Apart from the flush on her cheeks and the lust in her eyes, no one would believe that this high-ranking titled Douluo elder of the Spirit Hall had just been violated by a young man. Hearing Ling Yuan's words, Yichu could finally confirm that the test Ling Yuan spoke of, or rather, Bibi Dong's, was the second of his 9 trials of destruction. How did Bibi Dong know? Could it be related to the content of this second test? Or was it also related to the god of Azura, the game between Azura and destruction? Did she say anything else? Yichu asked. Ling Yuan shook her head. No, she just told me to complete the second test as soon as possible, because she has limited time. Yichu was completely bewildered. What did his divine test have to do with Bibi Dong? What time did she dare to ask? Very soon. Yichu immediately realized the crucial point. According to the previous clues, Bibi Dong was undergoing the 9 trials of Azura, and she already possessed the Azura divine sword. According to the 9 trials of destruction, the King of Slaughter also possessed the Azura divine sword. If these 2 swords were the same, then since Azura had already descended upon the divine trial, he must know how Bibi Dong obtained the Azura divine sword. Was he pushing himself back along the original path, ultimately delivering the Azura divine sword to Bibi Dong? Did the god of destruction also know this? Or was he kept in the dark, simply trying to manipulate Azura and ultimately benefiting him? Regardless, since it would allow him to quickly complete the divine trial, Yichu naturally wouldn't refuse. Since the god of Azura could still use him, he wouldn't pose any danger to him. Alright, let's rest here for a while, and then we'll head to the city of slaughter. Yichu was no longer in a hurry to hunt for soul rings. Ling Yuan nodded slightly in agreement. The 3 sat cross-legged on the grass. And Yichu activated his blue-silver domain, adjusting himself to his peak condition. Chapter 860, Courtesy first, then attack. After resting, Yichu slowly stood up, his deep and mysterious eternal kaleidoscope eyes slowly opening. His gaze swept over Ling Yuan and Hulina in turn. His voice was steady and powerful. We'll go to Slaughter Town now. We'll be polite first, then force us. We'll see the King of Slaughter smoothly before we take action. Ling Yuan nodded slightly. Hulina also nodded vigorously, her beautiful face full of determination. Soon, Yichu pulled them into the divine might space. Slaughter Town. In the tavern where Yichu had first arrived at the entrance to the Slaughter City. At this moment, the tavern was filled with a cold and murderous atmosphere. Suddenly, the space in front of the counter rippled like a boulder thrown into a calm lake. Some soul masters with higher cultivation levels were instantly attracted by the strange fluctuation, their gazes like sharp arrows, locked on the void. Look! Is the city of slaughter about to open? One of them shouted excitedly, his eyes gleaming with longing and excitement. Great! We've waited here for so long, finally we can enter that paradise of sin, another person said impatiently. It was as if the city of slaughter held endless allure for them. But it was only a paradise for the strong. As space distorted, the waiter at the counter frowned. He had worked in this tavern for many years and knew every movement at the entrance to the city of slaughter like the back of his hand. He was certain that this was not a sign of the entrance to the city of slaughter opening at all. Just as everyone was wondering, the figures of Yichu, Ling Yuan, and Hulina gradually appeared in front of the counter like phantoms. The intense killing intent emanating from Hulina and Yichu, almost tangible, instantly spread outwards like a surging tide. The many soul masters in the tavern felt an irresistible pressure rushing towards them, their hearts pounding with fear. Who are you? Someone asked bravely, but their voice trembled. I want to see the King of Slaughter. Yichu spoke without uttering a single wasted word, his concise and clear words revealing an undeniable authority. Simultaneously, he and Hulina unleashed their god of slaughter domains without hesitation. The terrifying aura instantly permeated the entire tavern, instilling a fear deep within everyone's souls. The god of slaughter, the waiter was terrified, his face turning deathly pale, his legs going weak, almost collapsing to the ground. The other soul masters stared wide-eyed, as if witnessing an unbelievable scene. They stared blankly at Yichu and Hulina, their bodies trembling uncontrollably. How is this possible? Someone muttered in disbelief. How can there be such a young god of slaughter? Another person asked, their mouth agape in astonishment. Hulina, listening to the surrounding commotion, felt a surge of irritation. She abruptly turned her head and shouted sharply, "Shut up!" This shout resounded like thunder in the tavern. As soon as the words fell, the entire tavern fell silent, as if time had stood still. Yichu's eternal kaleidoscope slowly spun, its mysterious pattern seemingly containing boundless power. He spoke again, his voice cold and resolute. "I'll say it again, we want to see the King of Slaughter. Will you inform him, or will we break in ourselves?" The waiter was terrified and completely flustered. Hearing Yichu's words, he hurriedly replied, trembling, "Your Excellency, the King of Slaughter, please calm your anger. I will go and inform the higher-ups immediately." The waiter turned around in a panic, opened a hidden door that emitted a chilling wind, and ran quickly towards the passage inside the tavern. His steps were somewhat unsteady. He was clearly quite frightened by the aura of Yichu and his group. Only those who had experienced the Slaughter City knew just how terrifying someone who could obtain the title of King of Slaughter truly was. The people in the tavern still dared not breathe. Their eyes were fixed on Yichu and his companions, their hearts filled with awe and fear. Hulina scanned the room. The sharpness in her eyes made those who tried to peek lower their heads. Ling Yuan stood quietly to the side. Although she lacked a talent domain, her aura was in no way weaker than Yichu's or Hulina's. In the City of Slaughter, in a room shrouded in endless darkness, an exceptionally large chair stood silently, like a majestic throne. Blue and purple crystals intertwined on the chair, outlining a strange shape resembling a drum tower. These crystals shimmered with a mysterious light in the dim light. Apart from this striking chair, everything in the room was dark red, a deep color like dried blood, giving a sense of oppression and gloom. "Great King, Blood Azure and the Messenger of Hell have successfully traversed the Hell Road to become gods of slaughter," a cold female voice slowly echoed in the darkness, carrying a hint of awe and caution. The voice seemed to come from the netherworld, sending chills down one's spine. "Did you come here just to disgust me?" A tall figure slowly sat down on the giant chair, making a deep, muffled sound. In the darkness, his features were completely obscured. Only a vague outline could be made of the person's slender figure, like a blood-red phantom in the darkness. "Your Majesty, please calm your anger. They are outside, demanding to see you." The chilling female voice rang out again, its tone now more urgent. "Demanding to see me?" The tall man seated in the chair looked puzzled, his voice filled with confusion. "Yes, right here in the Slaughter Tavern, two gods of slaughter together with a strange woman," the chilling female voice reported truthfully, daring not to conceal anything. Blood Azure even threatened to storm in himself if he wasn't seen. "Why do they want to see me?" The King of Slaughter frowned, lost in thought. His fingers tapped lightly on the armrest of his chair, producing a rhythmic sound. After a moment of silence, he finally made a decision. "Go, bring them in." The King of Slaughter knew very well. Yichu and Hulina's soul power levels weren't high. In his view, even if they came, there wouldn't be any major problems. After all, this was the Slaughter capital, his territory. "Yes, Great King," the owner of that chilling female voice spoke again. A faint black shadow flickered in the dark corner. A seductive woman slowly emerged from the darkness. Her figure was like a ghost in the night. She wore a tight-fitting black robe, her face was pale, and her narrow eyes gleamed with an eerie green light. Like the eyes of a hungry wolf, they were filled with greed and cruelty. Her lips were painted with dark red lipstick, as if she had just drunk blood, exuding a bewitching yet terrifying aura. "King, I will go and bring them to you immediately." Chapter 861 Crystal Ball. Inside the Killing Tavern, the atmosphere was heavy and oppressive. Hulina stood quietly beside Yichu, a hint of worry in her beautiful eyes. She asked in a low voice, "Yichu, what should we do next? The King of Slaughter is definitely not weak. If we're not careful, we might find ourselves in danger." Before Yichu could answer, Ling Yuan calmly took over. "Don't worry, Nana, danger is already. She's just waiting for us to see the King of Slaughter. We'll definitely give him an unexpected surprise." "Teacher," Hulina looked at Ling Yuan, puzzled. "Yes, this thing I have is enough." Ling Yuan nodded slightly, her expression calm. She slowly reached out and took out a crystal ball the size of a human head from her soul tool. The crystal ball was crystal clear, radiating a mysterious light, as if it contained some kind of special power. Yichu looked at the crystal ball, completely bewildered. He frowned slightly. The crystal ball seemed to contain a soul tool for communication. Without much thought, he softly instructed, "Regardless, we should still be careful. Nana, don't stray too far from me. If anything unexpected happens, we can retreat in time. Don't worry, I won't hold you back." Hulina nodded slightly, a gentle smile on her face, and lightly hooked her arm around Yichu's. The others in the tavern fell silent. Their gazes towards Yichu and his companions were filled with fear and confusion. When exactly did the City of Slaughter gain 2 more killing gods? A moment later, the hidden door behind the counter slowly opened again. A heavy footstep echoed from the depths of the passage, each step seeming to pound on everyone's hearts. The footsteps grew closer. The soul masters in the tavern were all ruthless and vicious, their eyes were fixed on the entrance to the passage, their hearts pounding uncontrollably. Several burly guards, as large as small mountains and clad in heavy armor, slowly emerged. The heavy armor gleamed with a cold metallic luster in the dim light, resembling an impregnable fortress. They surrounded a figure clad in black armor. The armor emitted a dark, eerie light, like a messenger from hell. This person wielded a greatsword, its blade broad and heavy, seemingly engraved with ancient and mysterious runes. Even his face was covered by thick black armor, revealing only a pair of eyes that gleamed with a cold light, obscuring his true appearance. A chilling atmosphere instantly filled the tavern, making the already quiet place even more deathly silent. The diners seemed to be suppressed by this powerful aura, unable to move, and could only watch silently. The Dread Knights are here, welcoming the 2 gods of slaughter back to the City of Slaughter, the Dread Knight's deep voice rang out. The voice seemed to come from the abyss, extremely cold, more like the whisper of a demon than human speech. Before the words had even finished, the Dread Knights bowed respectfully to Yichu and his companions, their movements perfectly synchronized. As if they had undergone countless training sessions, their expressions were filled with respect and awe. Well? Does the King of Slaughter wish to see us? Yichu's blood-red eyes slowly rotated the eternal kaleidoscope. In this slaughter city, filled with blood and slaughter, if he could use his soul skills, he truly felt little fear. Although his cultivation level remained at level 50 due to the limitations of his soul rings, his mental strength had genuinely improved significantly during this time. Most soul Douluos without a HUD soul bone would be utterly helpless against his full-forced Tsukuyomi. The Terror Knight felt the immense pressure emanating from Yichu and couldn't help but feel a slight chill. That cold, hoarse voice rang out again. We are here on the orders of the Slaughter Envoy to guide you 2 gods of slaughter to meet our great King of Slaughter. Enough nonsense, lead the way. Hulina snorted coldly, her voice tinged with impatience. Having experienced a brutal carnage of the Slaughter City, her temper had become somewhat irritable and volatile. Only in front of Yichu would she appear so obedient and docile, completely at his mercy. The Terror Knight, well aware of the power of the God of Slaughter, bowed slightly and respectfully replied, Please, both gods of slaughter, withdraw your God of Slaughter domains as a sign of my king's respect. Yichu narrowed his eyes slightly, pondered for a moment, nodded to Hulina, and together they withdrew their God of Slaughter domains. Gentlemen, please follow us. The Terror Knight turned and walked towards the mysterious passage. Yichu and the other 2 exchanged glances, their eyes revealing vigilance, before quietly following behind the Terror Knight. The remaining Terror Knights surrounded Yichu and the others, full of vigilance and solemnity, as if afraid that Yichu and the others might suddenly cause trouble. A flash of bloodlust crossed Yichu's eyes. He keenly sensed that the moment they stepped into the passage, Ling Yuan secretly channeled soul power into the crystal ball in her hand, seemingly sending some kind of mysterious message. As the last Terror Knight entered the passage, the Killing Tavern didn't return to its usual tranquility. Instead, it became somewhat noisy, filled with chatter. Entering the passage, it was just as long and dark as when Yichu had last visited. The only light came from the crystal ball in Ling Yuan's hand and the bloodlust in Yichu's eyes. Unlike Yichu's route into the Killing City, the Terror Knight knocked heavily twice on a wall with no distinguishing features. Thump. Thump. Before the sound faded, a door opened. The bloodlust emanating from it contrasted sharply with the darkness of the passage. The Terror Knight raised his hand. Please. In the King's Palace, messengers will receive you. Hulina and Ling Yuan didn't move, but looked at Yichu beside them. Let's go in. Yichu took Hulina's hand and strode inside. He had already seen everything with his Sharingan. There was no danger inside. Just some guards and women. Stepping into the crimson space, Yihuan and Hulina exchanged glances, both feeling a strange sense of familiarity. Hulina clung to Yichu's arm, whispering, Yichu, this should be the very top of the Hell Slaughter Arena. It does look very similar. Yichu nodded slightly. His crimson eyes glanced at the slowly closing passage behind him. In a place like this, he couldn't afford to be careless. His Sharingan had to be constantly activated. Suddenly, a chilling female voice rang in their ears. 2 gods of slaughter, our great King of Slaughter awaits you inside. Chapter 862 Bibidong and Arao. Hearing that chilling, sinister voice, Yichu, Lingyuan Douluo, and Hulina all focused their gazes on it instantly. A faint black shadow flickered in the dark corner, like a ghost in the night. Then, a seductive woman slowly emerged from around the corner. Her face was as pale as paper, devoid of any color. Her narrow eyes gleamed with a ghostly green light, like the eyes of a hungry wolf, filled with greed and cruelty, sending chills down one's spine. Her lips were painted with dark red lipstick, the color as if she had just drunk blood, exuding a bewitching and decadent aura. She wore a long purple dress with a low neckline, barely covering her two barely visible, mysterious places. The hem was covered only by two drapery panels, leaving her completely naked, exuding a sense of lewdness. When her eyes met Yichu's Sharingan, the woman's gaze became somewhat dazed, her face flushed slightly, and her brows furrowed slightly. Yichu lowered his eyes, his voice cold and brief. "Lead the way," the two concise words carried a chilling killing intent. The alluring woman, however, showed no fear. She was nothing more than a god of death. In this city of slaughter, it was the domain of their great king of slaughter. He bowed slightly, raising his hand in a gesture of invitation. "How, two gods of death, please, let's go." With Yichu's voice, Lingyuan and Hulina followed closely behind him, behind the alluring woman. Yichu's eternal kaleidoscope slowly rotated in his eyes. He carefully surveyed his surroundings, trying to find anything noteworthy. It was a dark red passage, seemingly extending slightly upwards. Dark red patterns appeared to flow on the walls, as if blood were surging within. Strange symbols occasionally appeared on the ground, emanating an eerie aura. The stench of blood in the passage grew stronger, almost nauseating. With each step, faint screams seemed to emanate from an unknown place. Yichu was now certain that this was above the hell slaughter arena. The crystal ball in Lingyuan Daluo's hand emitted a faint light under her manipulation, seemingly communicating and adjusting something. After walking for about 15 minutes, Lingyuan Daluo suddenly took Yichu's arm, leaned close to his ear, and whispered, "Yichu, don't act so quickly. Leave it to me. With danger here, there's nothing to fear." Yichu hesitated for a moment, then frowned slightly and nodded in agreement. In a place incredibly far from the Douluo continent, seemingly separated by endless time and space, in a space as black as ink, Bibidong, dressed in a magnificent purple robe, sat quietly in the center of the darkness. Her face was icy cold, devoid of any warmth. On her smooth forehead was a small, blood-red sword-shaped mark, radiating an extremely violent killing intent. Her long, jet-black hair, flowing like a waterfall, cascaded smoothly over her shoulders, shimmering even in the darkness. Her eyes were like deep amethyst crystals, mysterious and noble, their sharpness and domineering gaze intimidating. Her nose was high and straight, like jade carved from white stone. Her lips were naturally red, with a slight upturn at the corners carrying a hint of cold arrogance. Her figure was tall and graceful, exquisitely proportioned. A purple robe clung tightly to her body, highlighting her slender waist and long legs. Her shoulders were broad yet graceful. Her skin was as white as snow, smooth and delicate like mutton fat jade. Especially striking was the intangible nobility and holiness she exuded, the aura of someone who had long held a high position, which inspired a sense of reverence in all who beheld her. Behind Bibidong, a gigantic, dark green spider hovered. A crystalline, dark green light emanated from the spider like ripples on water, seemingly staining the dark space with an eerie hue. In the ground before her, a chilling blood-red longsword stood erect. Over 2 meters long, its entire body was blood-red, as if just pulled from a pool of blood. The long, broad blade was covered with dark golden demonic runes. Beneath Bibidong, 9 blood-red spirit rings slowly rotated. Each ring radiated a powerful and terrifying energy fluctuation. The blood-red light intertwined with the darkness, creating a suffocating sense of oppression. "Danger, are we going back?" Beside Bibidong floated a woman dressed in coarse cloth, resembling a village woman. Though seemingly ordinary, she was clean and tidy. Tall and slender, with curvaceous figures, her figure was perfectly proportioned. Even her simple clothing could not conceal her alluring figure. Her face was beautiful, and although her skin wasn't as white as Bibidong's, it had a healthy tan, giving her a simple and natural beauty. Her large eyes were like clear lake water, bright and captivating, with long, slightly upturned eyelashes that seemed to speak volumes. She had a high nose bridge, small, rosy lips, and a gentle smile at the corners of her mouth. Most striking of all were a pair of fluffy, snow-white rabbit ears perched on her head, occasionally twitching slightly. These rabbit ears created a peculiar contrast with her gentle temperament and graceful figure, yet it felt perfectly harmonious. If Yuchi were here, he would surely recognize this woman with rabbit ears as Xiao Wu's mother, Arao. Yes, I'm only going back temporarily, I can't stay long. Bibi Dong nodded slightly, her jade-like chin gently raised, then slowly opened her purple eyes. The spider behind her and the spirit rings beneath her all retracted. I see, Arao said, a hint of disappointment in her eyes. Her clear, watery eyes dimmed slightly. She lowered her head, longing for that lively, adorable, and energetic figure. Don't worry, Lingyun told me your daughter has already been devoured by him. Bibi Dong's voice carried a sour tone, a hint of jealousy lurking beneath the surface. Arao's eyes, however, were filled with heartache. Xiao is so young, it must have hurt a lot the first time, right? I heard you say he even knocked Yuho unconscious. Hearing Arao's rambling, Bibi Dong's face darkened. She really knew how to rub salt in the wound. How could she know that Tang Yuho would eat what she had prepared and steal her man? Bibi Dong didn't say anything more. Instead, she looked at the azure divine sword before her, raised her hand, and dispelled its shield. She asked coldly, let me confirm again, this time, going back shouldn't be a problem, right? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 863 Bibi Dong heads to the city of slaughter. Bibi Dong's voice faded. The blood-red Shura divine sword glowed faintly, its majestic yet languid voice emanating from within. Don't worry, the city of slaughter is my place of inheritance. Although I lent it to Rakshasa, they won't be able to detect what's happening inside. I'll tear open a special passage between the abyss and Douluo continent, then you can go there, finish your business, and return to continue guiding this continent. You don't need to tell me the second half, Bibi Dong coldly retorted. If it weren't for your damn divine trial, why would I have stayed here for so many years? I'm doing this for Douluo continent. The current Douluo continent has actually been declining. The power of soul masters and soul beasts is unequal. This deficiency only needs tens of thousands of years to make soul beasts disappear and the soul master system collapse. Without finding some replacements for soul beasts, it's really not good, the voice from the Shura divine sword cried out in injustice. But you can't make me, someone who isn't even a god, handle the things you should be doing. Bibi Dong's face turned ashen. She had been completely conscripted. It's alright, you're practically a god now. You can use the power of the Azure God at will, and your entire body is made of soul bones over 100,000 years old. Even the sea god would be terrified of you now. The voice from the Azure divine sword carried a hint of smugness. Bibi Dong coldly said, if you expect me to do everything, you might as well just give me your divine position. That won't do. We have to follow the rules. The voice from the Azure divine sword righteously rejected Bibi Dong's suggestion. Rules? You're talking to me about rules? Who smuggled me here? Bibi Dong was extremely agitated. Staying in this god-forsaken place where she couldn't see anyone and had to live in constant fear, she was lucky she hadn't gone crazy. I had no choice, the Azure divine sword chuckled, explaining, you're only responsible for guiding this continent, while I have many other things to consider. That brat destruction is always watching me. I often have to hide, and it's tough on me. Destruction is too conservative. I mentioned this plan to him, but he didn't agree, otherwise we wouldn't need you. Arao listened to Bibi Dong and the Azure divine sword's conversation in silence. What they said was true, the number of soul beasts was indeed steadily decreasing. On average, each soul master had to kill several soul beasts, not to mention those killed not for acquiring soul rings. It could be said that acquiring a soul ring resulted in far more than just one soul beast dying. The entire process was filled with bloodshed. Furthermore, the human world, with the control of empires and the spirit hall, rarely experienced large-scale bloodshed. But soul beasts were different. Infighting among soul beasts was a constant occurrence, a performance in itself. For food, for territory. The casualties among spirit beasts are probably greater than those caused by spirit masters. Even after spirit beasts transform into human form, once they reach the 7th spirit ring, They still need to wield the butcher's knife against their own kind to obtain the next 3 spirit rings. It can be said that the threat to the spirit beast race is far more than just external. More importantly, it is internal. To think they can hold out for another tens of thousands of years is probably an exaggeration. Alright, calm down. You'll see that kid when you get back, won't you? The Azure Divine Sword didn't want to argue with Bibidong anymore. Instead, it muttered to itself. When that guy Destruction finds out that Yichu will return to the past, his expression will definitely be incredibly interesting. Won't there be any deviations? Bibidong's face showed worry, as well as a touch of tenderness and nostalgia. Don't worry, it's destined. Besides, I've already prepared the power he needs for his martial soul evolution. You just need to help him comply with Destruction's wishes and seize the Azure Divine Sword. This should be very simple for you. The Azure Divine Sword's voice carried a hint of schadenfreude. HMPH. You probably don't want that bat anymore, right? Bibidong asked. What would I do with something like that? Give it to Yichu if you want, the Azure God said casually, completely disregarding the blood-red 9-headed Bat King. It seems like it's almost time. Bibidong looked at the void before her, and with a thought, Arrow's figure disappeared from her body. Okay, I'll open the interdimensional passage to the City of Slaughter now. Buzz. As soon as she finished speaking, a blood-red crack suddenly appeared in the pitch-black space, faintly radiating blood light. It continued to grow, eventually becoming the size of a person. Bibidong immediately stood up, picked up the Azure God sword, and stepped towards the crack. She pulled down her cloak to conceal her stunningly beautiful face. With a hint of excitement on her face, she stepped into the crack. A familiar yet unfamiliar voice rang in her ears. This is Bibidong, inside the City of Slaughter. Yichu and his companions followed closely behind the alluring and wanton woman, slowly making their way through the dimly lit passage. About 15 minutes passed in the blink of an eye. Finally, they arrived before a magnificent, imposing gate. Tall and heavy, it was intricately engraved with a 9-headed bat motif. The 9-headed bats were so lifelike, as if they might leap from the gate at any moment, exuding a mysterious and eerie aura. The woman bowed slightly, extending her slender fingers to lightly tap the stone door. Her voice, sinister yet strikingly jarring in the silence, spoke. Great King, the 2 gods of death have arrived. Her tone was respectful and devout, tinged with a barely perceptible fear. Bring them in, came a low, sharp voice. Even through the heavy stone gate, it was still jarring. Before the words were finished, the stone door slowly opened. A pungent, nauseating stench of blood rushed out like a tidal wave. Douluo's brows furrowed, her exquisite face filled with disgust. Even Yichu and Hulina, who had only recently acquired the God of Slaughter domain, couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines. 2 gods of slaughter, please, the alluring woman bowed her head respectfully. Her posture was extremely humble, as if she were welcoming a supreme deity. But not to Yichu and his companions, but to the King of Slaughter. Yichu suppressed his discomfort and led Hulina and Douluo slowly into the room. Everything in the room was dark red. The deep color, like dried blood, gave people a sense of oppression and gloom. It was as if countless drops of blood had seeped into the walls and floor. Yichu and the others did not linger on the surrounding blood-red color. Instead, they locked their gazes directly onto the exceptionally large chair in the center of the room. It stood silently, like a majestic throne. Chapter 864 One punch pierces through the hellish slaughter field. Blue and purple crystals intertwined on the chair, shimmering with a mysterious light, outlining a wondrous shape resembling a drum tower. Behind the chair, wings spread like a bat's wings, seemingly capable of enveloping the entire world, exuding an aura of intimidation. Seated on the throne was the King of Slaughter, clad in a blood-red robe, his entire body enveloped in a massive, high-collared scarlet cloak. His face was as pale as paper, like someone grieving a long illness, yet he emanated a chilling aura. His blood-red hair and eyes, seen from afar, resembled a blood-red shadow, sending shivers down one's spine. Looking at Yichu and his companions, the King of Slaughter remained calm. Even with his spirit kite Douluo present, he was fearless. In this City of Slaughter, a place filled with blood, he was practically invincible. Blood Azure, messenger of hell, I didn't expect to meet you again so soon. Congratulations on successfully traversing the road to hell and becoming the new gods of slaughter of the City of Slaughter. A hoarse, chilling voice echoed in the blood-red room. Hulina frowned, finding the voice incredibly grating, and wanted to kill the king of slaughter before her. Lingyuan Douluo leaned closer to Yichu and whispered, "Yichu, stall for time, just a little bit." Yichu nodded calmly. "King of slaughter, how much of your congratulations are genuine? You probably just want us all to die on the hell road." Yichu's eternal kaleidoscope spun continuously. He glanced at the crystal ball in Lingyuan Daoluo's hand, its energy fluctuations growing increasingly intense. Then he looked at the ground beside the king of slaughter. There, a chilling blood-red longsword was stuck straight in the ground. Over 2 meters long, it was entirely blood-red, as if it had just been pulled from a pool of blood. Dark golden demonic runes covered the long, broad blade. How? The king of slaughter wasn't angered by Yichu's tone. Instead, he readily admitted it. "Since you know my thoughts, you can naturally understand me. However, I think you also know that my city of slaughter has absolutely no ill intentions towards any of you gods of slaughter. After all, if I really wanted you dead, probably no one in the city of slaughter could stop me. Hell, I'm afraid you don't want to, but rather you dare not." Yichu naturally understood the king of slaughter's thoughts. After all, the 2 gods of slaughter who walked out before him were no ordinary people. One was Tang Hao, the strongest soul master, and the other was Bibi Dong, the strongest pope. No matter which one of them it was, the king of slaughter would avoid offending them if possible. If you were to make a move and something happened to Yichu and Hulina, he would have to face the now grown-up god of slaughter, Bibi Dong, and the entire city of slaughter might be thrown into turmoil. Insolence. Even if you are gods of slaughter, you have no right to speak to a great king like this, the alluring woman beside him immediately shouted sharply. "Shut up." Hulina's angry shout followed immediately. She merely glanced at the woman, and her killing god domain erupted from her body, crushing towards her. The alluring woman's cultivation was low. She only held such a position because the king of slaughter had taken her as his possession. Faced with Hulina's mastery of mental power, the mental intimidation emanating from her killing god domain immediately caused her to change color drastically, almost fleeing in terror. The few pieces of cloth covering her body nearly fell to the ground, leaving her practically naked. HMPH, in the dark red space, the king of slaughter only uttered a few words, yet strange sound waves echoed throughout the room, causing the air to vibrate. A chilling aura filled the room. And with the alluring woman's screams, if the king of slaughter didn't intervene, she would soon suffer a mental breakdown. "Nana," Yichu gently grasped Hulina's soft hand, signaling her to calm down. "Blood Azuro, Hell Messenger, what brings you two here? Are you just here to chat about trivial things?" The king of slaughter's voice turned cold. His dark reddish-brown eyes stared intently at Yichu and his companions. Just as Yichu was about to speak, he heard Lingyuan Daoluo's somewhat pleased voice. "Yichu is ready. Danger is coming. Do whatever you want." Yichu is stunned. Bibi Dong was coming? Yichu's eternal mage Xiao Sharingan looked at the crystal ball in Lingyuan Daoluo's hand, which emanated an invisible spatial power. Filled with curiosity, Yichu looked up at the king of slaughter. "Our purpose here is simple, to kill you." "Kill me?" The king of slaughter was stunned, before he could even react. Yichu's eternal mage Xiao Sharingan had already turned to the alluring woman still lying on the ground beside him. A few drops of blood trickled from the corner of her eye. Amaterasu, Yichu unleashed his long dormant soul skill, and instantly, black flames ignited on the woman's body. The alluring woman let out another shrill, heart-wrenching scream, rolling on the ground, even banging her head against the earth in an attempt to extinguish the black flames on her head. "How dare you!" the king of slaughter roared coldly. A vast, bloody aura surged towards Yichu and his companions like a tsunami. Yichu immediately prepared for battle. He summoned his blood-red Susanoo, which he hadn't used in a long time. Its broad ribs enveloped the 3 of them, and as Yichu continuously channeled his soul power, Susanoo grew larger, sprouting a head and arms. Then, flesh and tendons clung tightly to the original skeletal frame. A layer of blood-red skin then grew, covering Susanoo's body. Yichu's eyes flashed with blood-red light again, and a Tengu mask had already appeared on his body. In this state, even ordinary soul saints couldn't break through his defenses. Even if a soul Douluo could break the Tengu mask, there were still several layers of defense waiting for him inside. However, Yichu hadn't acquired a soul ring yet, so his soul power and eye power weren't quite matched, but it was sufficient for now. "What is this thing?" The king of slaughter looked at the red giant that was about to destroy his palace. His expression changed slightly, and he immediately stood up, gripping the Azure divine sword beside him. At the same time, Yichu had already controlled Susanoo, unleashing a giant fist to the King of Slaughter's throne. So fast, the King of Slaughter's blood-red eyes bulged, and before he could even raise the azure divine sword in his hand, he was already hit. Boom! The King of Slaughter's throne shattered. Above the Hell Slaughter arena, a deafening roar erupted, and dense smoke and dust, carrying countless stones, fell towards the Hell Slaughter arena where the slaughter was in full swing. Yichu smashed through the King of Slaughter's palace with a single punch. Chapter 865 The Fear of the King of Slaughter. Hulina and Lingyuan Douluo stood inside Susanoo, their eyes filled with shock as they watched the destruction Yichu had caused. Without any soul skills, and with a martial soul true body that wasn't even half finished, a simple, ordinary strike could cause such devastation. It was terrifying. "You're courting death," a chilling howl echoed throughout the room in the Hell Slaughter arena. Within the smoke, a blood-red cocoon enveloped the King of Slaughter, slowly revealing its form. The King of Slaughter's skin had become even paler. Blood trickled from the corner of its mouth. So talkative, Yichu, standing inside Susanoo, unleashed a direct amaterasu at the King of Slaughter. A piercing scream pierced the entire Hell Slaughter arena. Many of the fallen ones, their faces filled with panic, stopped fighting and looked up at the arena above, their eyes filled with curiosity. The Terror Knights were urgently assembling, frantically rushing towards the King of Slaughter's palace. The King of Slaughter floated in the air. The blood cocoon ignited eerie black flames, threatening to devour them completely. Boom! Suddenly, the blood-red cocoon exploded. Black flames scattered, and blood-red remains strewn everywhere. The King of Slaughter fully revealed himself, his pale skin etched with mysterious blood patterns, a sword-shaped demonic mark on his forehead, and a pair of enormous blood-red wings spread outwards from his back. He floated in the air, his eyes fixed menacingly on Yichu and his companions. But what awaited him was Kagutsuchi, whom Yichu had prepared long ago. A blood-red bow and arrow, formed from black flames, were held atop the arm of the massive Susanoo. The moment the King of Slaughter raised his head, it was launched. Whoosh, screech, the King of Slaughter let out a non-human howl, the sound wave of which directly blasted Kagutsuchi, whom Yichu had fired, into countless fragments, sending them plummeting towards the hellish slaughter arena below. What is this thing? The fallen ones watching below, enduring the falling amaterasu fire, their bodies engulfed in black flames, howled and scattered in terror. Just as Yichu's Kagutsuchi was being overwhelmed by the King of Slaughter's roar, the crystal ball in Lingyuan Douluo's hand flew directly towards the King of Slaughter, transforming into a purple streak of light. "Get out of my way!" Clang. The King of Slaughter looked at the purple streak of light, his azure divine sword held horizontally in front of him, directly knocking the purple streak of light away, landing not far behind him. "You actually dare to offend the great King of Slaughter, you deserve to die. My sons, come here and tear apart all the culprits who want to destroy this paradise." The King of Slaughter's voice resounded throughout the entire Slaughter City. Along with it, a strange crimson color spread. All the fleeing fallen ones immediately stopped, as if some restriction had been lifted from their bodies, and soul rings continuously appeared on their forms. A fallen one casually killed the man next to him with a soul skill, his eyes filled with boundless joy. "Ha ha, I can use soul skills now." In the blink of an eye. Before he could finish speaking, he was struck in the head by someone not far away. "Ha, I'm the Supreme Soul Douluo again." Boom. Above the Hell Slaughter arena, in the palace of the King of Slaughter, a deafening roar resounded. The azure divine sword struck the Tengu mask. The sharpness of the super artifact opened Yichu's eyes, actually slicing off a portion of Susanoo, but it was only a portion. How could this be? The King of Slaughter stared in shock at the still-standing behemoth before him. Surprise appeared in his blood-red eyes. He called out again, "My comrades, tear apart the invaders." Swish swish swish. As the King of Slaughter finished speaking, the fallen ones of the entire Slaughter City finally reacted. Flying Soul Masters immediately spread their wings and flew towards the top of the Hell Slaughter arena, while the others quickly boarded or began climbing the walls surrounding the arena. "Haha. Blood Azure, Hell Messenger, I must admire your courage. It truly surprises me, and at the same time, it shows me your foolishness. This is the Slaughter City, and I am the King of Slaughter. In this place, even if you obtain the Killing God domain, so what? Haha. Just wait to die." The King of Slaughter didn't raise his eyes to attack Yichu again, but simply flapped his bat wings and flew in the air, waiting for the fallen ones of the Hell Slaughter Arena to arrive on the battlefield so he could reap the benefits. Whether they could use their soul skills was merely a matter of a thought for him. The King of Slaughter was fearless. Yichu, what do we do? Hulina stood beside Yichu, watching the fallen ones about to arrive on the battlefield and the clanging footsteps of the Terror Knights outside the palace. Don't worry, Nana. Look over there. Our reinforcements are almost here, but they'll just have to face those Terror Knights behind them. Ling Yuan Douluo pointed to the purple crystal ball she had thrown to smash the King of Slaughter. There, the crystal ball had transformed into vortex, stirring up the space of the Slaughter City. That's true, but I remember, the leader of the Terror Knights is a titled Douluo, isn't he? Yichu spoke while activating his Susanoo. His soul power probably couldn't support him in a full-blown duel with a titled Douluo. What's that? The King of Slaughter followed Yichu's gaze and looked behind him. His blood-red eyebrows furrowed. Something terrifying seemed to be about to cross over from the purple vortex. He had to stop it. This was the sixth sense that kept rising in the King of Slaughter's mind. He acted on his thought. The azure sword in the King of Slaughter's hand emitted a blood-red light, and a sharp slash shot towards the purple vortex. Just before it made contact, space suddenly distorted, and the blood-red sword energy vanished without a trace. The purple vortex suddenly turned black, as if a sliver of purple clothing and wisps of purplish-red hair were gushing out from the other end of the vortex. The King of Slaughter's expression changed, as if he were facing some great terror. He was about to launch another attack. At the same time, behind Yichu and the others, a large number of terrifying knights had arrived at the battlefield. Boom! The ancient, blood-red gate was directly pushed down by them. Kill! A terrifying wave of killing intent crashed onto Susanoo, but Yichu did not move an inch. Nana, let's go! Ling Yuan Douluo was about to rush out of Susanoo with Hulina when Yichu stopped her. Let me do it. Chapter 866 Bibi Dong arrives at the battlefield. The words had barely left his lips, their echo still lingering in the air. Yichu's eyes flashed with a blood-red light. He was fully focused, controlling the massive Susanoo. The Susanoo's colossal, mountain-like body twitched slightly, instantly triggering a powerful surge of air currents, like a small storm suddenly descending. It slowly raised its massive, pillar-like hand, and a jet-black fire lotus quietly bloomed in its enormous palm. The black flames danced like demonic flames from the underworld, radiating a mysterious yet extremely dangerous aura. The lotus petals seemed to be composed of pure dark energy, each containing boundless destructive power. In an instant, a rain of black fire, like an apocalyptic storm, rained down in all directions. The black fire traced beautiful yet deathly arcs in the air. Each drop of flame was like a deadly meteor, carrying the power to destroy everything. What is this? The numerous terrifying knights who had just entered were stunned by the sudden and astonishing sight. Faced with this rain of black fire, they felt an unprecedented and immense threat. Even though these terrifying knights wore heavy, jet-black armor, the thick armor gleaming with a cold and sinister metallic sheen in the dim light, the moment the black flames touched their armor like a demon's kiss, they instantly ignited into a raging inferno. The flames spread wildly across the armor, emitting a terrifying sizzling sound, like the low roar of a demon in the darkness. The terrifying knights panicked. They frantically twisted their bodies, trying to extinguish the black flames that seemed to come from hell. But the flames were like a persistent, incurable disease, impossible to extinguish. At the same time, while the terrifying knights were enduring the baptism of black flames, Yichu did not forget the King of Slaughter. The King of Slaughter was about to attack the purple vortex again. The hand gripping the azure sword had just been raised when black flames, like streaks of black lightning, instantly struck. The King of Slaughter was forced to halt his movements. He whirled around, a glint of madness in his eyes. He swiftly waved his sleeves, attempting to deflect the sudden attack. The black flames struck his defenses, emitting a hissing sound. The defenses were completely ineffective, dissolving continuously. Sensing the difficulty of the Amaterasu fire, the King of Slaughter's expression darkened further. Blood azure, the King of Slaughter roared. He glared at Yichu, who stood within Susanoo, and at the purple vortex that had already stepped out. A fierce resolve hardened in his heart. Wings enveloped his body, and he immediately charged towards the vortex. Yichu frowned. Just as he was about to concentrate his firepower on the King of Slaughter, the roar of the Terror Knights commander rang in his ears. Disarm! Disarm! The Terror Knights, engulfed in black flames, let out agonizing screams. The cries were shrill and echoed through the air. The leader of the Terror Knights shouted hoarsely, "Remove your armor." "How?" Yichu sneered, increasing his attack. "It's too late, damn it. What kind of flame is this?" The leader of the Terror Knights, the only titled Douluo, was ashen-faced. He watched his subordinates writhe in panic, like trapped beasts driven mad. Some were frantically waving their weapons, trying to extinguish the flames with their sword winds, but the black flame seemed alive, dancing even more violently with his sword winds. Their heavy armor melted rapidly under the scorching heat. Some knights desperately tried to pat the flames off their bodies, only to be instantly burned by the intense heat, their hands flaring with black flames, hastening their demise. Several rolled on the ground, desperately trying to extinguish the flames with mud, but the flames released by the black fire lotus seemed to possess a mysterious magic, impossible to extinguish easily. Their struggles grew increasingly futile. The black flames, like the tentacles of a demon, tightly bound them, dragging them step by step into the abyss of death. "Boy! You're courting death," the knight commander, his feet treading on 9 spirit rings, immediately attacked Yichu's Susanoo. Yichu immediately ordered, "Ling Yuan, it's yours, I'm ready." A sharp cry rang out. The fiery Ling Yuan let out a resounding cry, instantly bursting out of the Susanoo to meet the titled Douluo. Yichu turned his gaze back to the King of Slaughter and the fallen ones flying up from the Hell Slaughter arena. Frowning, he coldly said, "Nana, keep your God of Slaughter domain covering Ling Yuan, understood?" Yichu, who Lina, looking at the scene before her, which resembled a living hell, remained unmoved and immediately unleashed her God of Slaughter domain to envelop Ling Yuan. In this city of slaughter, no one could guarantee that the King of Slaughter could seal Ling Yuan's spirit rings alone. Let Tulina's killing god domain cover the area. That's the safest option. Divine might, Yichu's eternal kaleidoscope spun continuously, once again forcing the King of Slaughter back from the vicinity of the purple vortex. The black fire lotus grew smaller and smaller, but its attacks were only aimed at the King of Slaughter. Great King of Slaughter, finally, the fallen ones at the Soul Douluo and Soul Saint levels rushed into the King of Slaughter's palace. Yichu frowned. "My comrades, tear them apart," the King of Slaughter roared hysterically and immediately charged towards the black vortex. The fallen ones, however, were fearless and pounced on Yichu. They should be almost there. Yichu glanced at the black-purple vortex that had already stepped out with one leg. Susanoo simply swept across, forcing the fallen ones back. Just as the King of Slaughter was slashing with the Azure God sword, the purple vortex suddenly shone brightly, and a blood-red longsword appeared, startling the King of Slaughter. How is this possible? Just as the King of Slaughter was reeling from the shock, a figure slowly emerged. A magnificent purple robe enveloped the figure, and a few strands of crimson hair peeked out from within, radiating a captivating glow. She held a blood-red longsword identical to the King of Slaughter's. She simply stood in the void. The entire space seemed to fall silent, the air thickening and chilling. Forbidden, simple, melodious characters emanated from the robe. A mysterious light instantly enveloped the entire Slaughter City. Ah! This was followed by terrified screams. The fallen ones, the Dread Knights, all were horrified to discover that their soul rings were once again unusable. Chapter 867 Rewarding you for breaking through 100,000 years. Those once arrogant fallen ones, now without the support of their soul skills, instantly lost their balance in midair. They struggled frantically, but to no avail. Some fallen ones screamed in despair. With the force of gravity, they plummeted like kites with broken strings. The ground below seemed to become a net of death, awaiting their descent. Bang! 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 One after another, the fallen ones crashed to the ground with dull thuds. Many fallen ones died instantly, their blood staining the earth red. Corpses lay scattered there, a gruesome scene. A chorus of wails filled the air. The Terror Knights, too, lost their former might. They retreated in panic, no longer daring to approach Yichu's massive Susanoo. The titled Douluo who fought against Ling Yuan Douluo, unable to use his soul rings, was instantly suppressed by Ling Yuan, severely injured and collapsing to the ground. The Hell Slaughter arena fell into deathly silence. Everyone was stunned by the purple figure in the air and the eerie methods he employed. Her appearance was like the arrival of a second King of Slaughter, easily changing the entire situation. Those fallen ones who had been howling, wanting to storm the King of Slaughter's palace and tear Yichu apart, instantly fell silent. They stood quietly, not daring to utter a sound. The King of Slaughter's eyes widened. Looking at the scene before him, Endless shock surged within him. From that single character, it wasn't hard to tell that the woman beneath the purple robe was a woman, and the kind of woman whose voice alone suggested she wouldn't be ugly. Add to that a blood-red azure divine sword, and Yichu is certain of the woman's identity. Through the edge of the purple hat, Yichu could vaguely see her cold, tender, and longing eyes, like warm stars in a cold wind. Her nose was high and straight, her lips slightly upturned, carrying a hint of cold arrogance and smugness. Her skin was as white as snow, delicate and smooth, seemingly fragile. She was completely different from the madwoman in the papal palace. Perhaps their appearances were similar, though. But their temperaments were worlds apart. The Bibidong before him possessed a cold elegance, while the one from the spirit hall exuded a madness. Ling Yuan kicked away the title Douluo beneath her feet, looking at the purple-robed woman standing in the air. She knew, the king of slaughter was finished. Hulina stood beside Yichu, and through the blood-red Susanoo, she could still clearly see that beautiful figure, so incongruous with the blood-red hues of the slaughter city. A familiar feeling lingered in her heart. Teacher, purple eyes lowered. Looking at the fallen ones lying dead on the ground below, there was no pity in her eyes. These fallen ones meant nothing to her. The air was silent for a few seconds. The oppressive atmosphere seemed to freeze time itself. The king of slaughter finally asked in a trembling voice, "Who exactly are you?" His gaze was fixed on the mysterious woman beneath the purple robe, his heart filled with shock and confusion. He never imagined that there would be a second azure divine sword in the world. This was a super artifact. "Don't you know who I am?" The woman in the purple robe slightly raised her snow-white chin, her words revealing a hint of disdain. At the same time, a blood-red aura spread outwards from her body. The powerful aura of the god of slaughter's domain filled the entire space with a chilling atmosphere. The king of slaughter's eyes widened. He exclaimed in shock, "God of slaughter's domain. Could it be you?" The king of slaughter's voice trembled slightly. A figure flashed through his mind quickly, the god of slaughter who had once emerged from the city of slaughter, the being who had shaken the entire city of slaughter. "You are Bibidong." At this moment, the mysterious woman slowly raised her hand and gently lifted the purple veil that covered her face. A cascade of purplish-red hair cascaded down like a waterfall. It swayed slightly in the air, radiating a captivating luster. Her eyes were like dazzling purple gemstones, deep and mysterious. Her exquisite face was like the most perfect masterpiece of heaven. Delicate features, snow-white skin, every part of her exuded breathtaking beauty. "Teacher. It really is teacher," Hulina cried out joyfully, her eyes filled with respect as she looked at Bibidong floating in the air. After so many years, she had finally met her true teacher. The king of slaughter roared, "Impossible. Bibidong. How is this possible? How did you get the azure sword?" "How did I get it?" Bibidong raised an eyebrow, slowly turning her gaze to Yichu beside Hulina. Her eyes held a complex mix of tenderness and resentment. That look was as if she were looking at a heartless man, filled with endless sorrow and longing. Even Yichu felt somewhat uncomfortable. Bibidong said softly, "The azure sword in my hand was snatched from you by Yichu and given to me." "What?" The king of slaughter's eyes widened in confusion. He couldn't understand Bibidong's words. The azure sword was clearly still in his possession. How could it have been given to Bibidong? Moreover, if it truly was the azure sword in his hand, how could both swords appear at the same time? "Bibidong. You're playing me." "I'm just telling the truth." "By the way, is this your last words?" "I'm in a hurry, little bat." Bibidong looked contemptuously at the king of slaughter in the air. Hearing Bibidong call him little bat, the king of slaughter was shocked. His expression froze instantly, as if struck by lightning. This name contained his greatest secret, never known to anyone. Now it was easily uttered by Bibidong, filling him with fear. "You, how did you know?" the king of slaughter asked coldly, his eyes filled with killing intent. He had always thought he had hidden this secret very well. But he never expected it to be so easily revealed in front of Bibidong. "How, is it that difficult? I hold this sword, don't you know what that means?" Bibidong had a faint smile on her face. Calm and collected, Yichu slowly sheathed his Susanoo, quietly watching Bibidong and the king of slaughter. He had heard what Bibidong had just said. Given the current situation, it's less that he stole the azure sword and gave it to Bibidong, and more that Bibidong stole it and gave it to herself. He was just a middleman. You are the chosen one of the gods," the king of slaughter finally reacted, his eyes filled with terror as he looked at the bright red sword-shaped mark between Bibidong's brows. "Correct," Bibidong didn't say anything more and immediately raised the azure sword in her hand. "I'll reward you for breaking through 100,000 years of cultivation." As the words fell, the azure sword stood before Bibidong, and the entire slaughter city seemed to tremble slightly. A thick, pungent smell of blood filled the air. Chapter 868. Next, I'll send you to hell. The entire city of slaughter was enveloped in a powerful tremor, as if covered by a thick layer of blood mist. A suffocating atmosphere permeated every corner. The king of slaughter clearly sensed this unusual disturbance, and boundless terror surged within him. His authority had been completely suppressed at this moment. The king of slaughter looked at Bibidong, who held her sword upright before him. He was being rewarded with a breakthrough to 100,000 years of cultivation. What was going on? "Bibidong, what are you doing?" "What do you mean?" The king of slaughter's eyes were filled with bloodlust, his voice brimming with anger and panic. In his desperation, the king of slaughter immediately gripped the azure divine sword, which radiated a terrifying aura, attempting to interrupt Bibidong's actions. "Don't even think about it," the spirit kite Douluo immediately soared into the air, her aura overwhelming. Seventh soul skill, martial soul true body, a delicate shout rang out. The fiery spirit kite true body instantly shattered the king of slaughter's palace. Massive amounts of shattered rocks rained down on the hellish slaughter arena like meteors, instantly extinguishing the life force of those who had survived the fall. The surrounding buildings trembled under the powerful impact, cracks spreading like spiderwebs across the walls. Dust billowed, blurring visibility. The king of slaughter, enraged by this, swung his azure divine sword. A surging crimson sword aura hurtled towards Spirit Iris Douluo. Spirit Iris Douluo's eyes narrowed. His massive, fiery spirit kite form flapped its wings, a whirlwind of flames sweeping past, thwarting the fatal blow. Then, Spirit Iris Douluo chanted an incantation. Countless flaming arrows appeared out of thin air, raining down on the king of slaughter. HMPH, the king of slaughter sneered. His azure divine sword moved with impenetrable precision, deflecting the flaming arrows one by one. However, due to the sheer number of arrows, some still managed to breach his defenses, leaving shallow wounds. The king of slaughter was enraged. He flashed forward, instantly appearing before Spirit Kite Douluo, and swung his sword. Spirit Kite Douluo quickly flapped his wings to retreat, simultaneously spitting out a pillar of blazing fire. The king of slaughter again flapped his bat wings, forming a sturdy barrier that blocked the surging pillar of fire. The fire pillar struck his wings, erupting with dazzling light and intense heat. The surrounding air seemed to be distorted by the scorching flames, the heat wave unbearable. "Get out of my way," the king of slaughter roared. He swung his azure divine sword, unleashing an even more powerful crimson sword aura that pierced through the flames, slashing fiercely towards Spirit Kite Douluo. However, this sharp sword aura was diverted mid-air by a mysterious spatial vortex, failing to hit its target. "Blood Azure," the king of slaughter turned to look at Yichu, his eyes filled with a heavy killing intent. Yichu gently touched the corner of his eye, his eyes reflecting the eternal kaleidoscope of blood tinged with purple. The mysterious pattern spun continuously. "Don't forget I'm here too. Although my soul power is running low, don't even think about launching any decent attacks." Yichu's words revealed confidence and mockery. "You all deserve to die," the king of slaughter roared with earth-shattering fury. The voice seemed to come from hell, filled with endless rage and killing intent. The king of slaughter's eyes were bloodshot, like burning flames. The azure divine sword in his hand trembled slightly, emitting a blood-red aura of slaughter. He seemed eager to destroy everything in front of him. However, just as the azure divine sword in his hand was about to light up, Bibidong had already completed her preparations. "Let me help you break through to 100,000 years of cultivation." Crimson Nine-Headed Bat King. As soon as Bibidong finished speaking, the entire slaughter city seemed to be enveloped by blood-red power. The blood on the ground surged wildly, like an awakened demon. Thick blood seeped directly from the ground and the surrounding walls, like countless red tentacles, rushing towards the king of slaughter. "Ah, what is this?" The king of slaughter was horrified. Caught off guard, he was instantly engulfed by the blood-red waterfall cascading from the dome. The terrifying power of blood energy surged like a raging tide, continuously flowing into the body of the Crimson Nine-Headed Bat King. The surrounding blood converged around the king of slaughter, forming a gigantic blood sphere. The blood sphere emitted a nauseating stench and a terrifying pressure, like a bomb about to explode, ready to unleash its destructive power at any moment. The entire city of Slaughter was plunged into extreme fear and chaos. The Terror Knights and the Fallen stared in horror at the blood sphere in the sky, their king. Glug glug, the blood-red power, like a raging tide, continuously washed over the King of Slaughter. Gradually, the King of Slaughter seemed to have all his strength drained, his body collapsing limply into the blood sphere. A strange fluctuation emanated from the King of Slaughter. A ferocious, blood-red nine-headed bat king slowly emerged from its body. It wasn't large, yet it exuded a chilling aura. The blood-red nine-headed bat king's body was a deep, dark red, as if formed from congealed blood. Its wings were broad and strong, covered with sharp bone spikes, each gleaming with a cold light, seemingly capable of easily piercing steel. The Bat King's 9 heads were all different in shape. Some were ferocious and terrifying, revealing sharp fangs, some had empty eyes, as if they could see into one's soul, some were slightly lowered, seemingly deep in thought. Each head was miniature, yet each possessed a pair of blood-red eyes, flashing with an eerie light, like will-o'-the-wisps from hell. A thin layer of blood mist surrounded its body. Within the blood mist, countless wronged souls seemed to struggle and wail in agony. The crimson 9-headed Bat King trembled slightly, and an even more powerful surge of blood energy rushed in from all directions, frantically pouring into its body. The Bat King's body began to tremble slightly. All 9 heads rose simultaneously, emitting a chilling shriek. Crimson light emanated from its body, illuminating the entire hellish killing field. With a continuous infusion of blood energy, the crimson 9-headed Bat King's body began to change. Its wings became wider, its bone spikes sharper, gleaming with a terrifying light. Its body gradually swelled, and the oppressive aura it exuded grew stronger. The light on the crimson 9-headed Bat King's body became increasingly dazzling. Its 9 heads twisted and turned, as if enduring immense pain. However, this pain did not last long. Soon, the crimson 9-headed Bat King's body stabilized. At this moment, the crimson 9-headed Bat King had successfully broken through to the 100,000-year cultivation level. It exuded the powerful aura of a 100,000-year-old soul beast, its crimson light as dazzling as the sun. Its 9 heads appeared even more ferocious and terrifying. "Bibi Dong, what are you doing?" The crimson 9-headed Bat King let out a sharp, piercing screech. A smile appeared on Bibi Dong's face. Looking at the crimson 9-headed Bat King before her, she slowly lowered the azure divine sword in her hand. The city of Slaughter ceased its tremors. The crimson 9-headed Bat King remained trapped inside the blood sphere, its body falling to the ground. "Next, it's time to send you to hell. This is something he gave me, something he kept for a long time," Bibi Dong murmured softly. A blood-red light gradually shone in her eyes. Chapter 869 Bibi Dong's half-stepped Rinnegan? Hulina stared at the fallen King of Slaughter, her eyes filled with confusion. She never expected it. The King of Slaughter's true form was a 9-headed bat. This bizarre sight shocked her. At the same time, countless questions flooded her mind. What was the relationship between her teacher and Yichu? Why did her teacher say that the azure divine sword in her hand was a gift from Yichu? Did her teacher really come here for Yichu? Unlike Hulina's focus, Yichu's gaze was fixed on the blood-red light in Bibi Dong's eyes, his eyes showing surprise. "Bibi Dong. No. I don't want to die," the blood-red 9-headed Bat King let out a hoarse cry. It sensed a deadly threat from Bibi Dong, understanding that she wasn't joking, but truly intended to send it to hell. "Don't worry, I'll leave you some of your soul," the blood-red light in Bibi Dong's eyes fully illuminated, mixed with traces of black and purple. The small, purple 3-leaf windmill was located inside, while the larger, black 6-pointed star enveloped it. The whites of his eyes had turned completely blood-red, making the whole scene eerie and shocking. "Yichu, is that your martial soul in teacher's eyes? What's going on?" Hulina also noticed this astonishing sight, her doubts deepening. In her view, her teacher and Yichu had never met. How could Yichu have left something inside her teacher? When exactly did this happen? "No, it's a little different from my martial soul." Yichu's eyes held a hint of understanding. If the pattern in Bibi Dong's eyes were simply the same as his, it wouldn't surprise or delight Yichu. His eyesight far surpassed that of ordinary people. He could clearly see that the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan in Bibi Dong's eyes was roughly equivalent to his. The only difference was that Bibi Dong's entire eye was surrounded by very, very faint purple ripples. Yichu noticed this immediately. The pattern in Bibi Dong's eyes was exactly the same as the one Douluo had drawn for him. If at that time he still harbored doubts. At this moment, Yichu is certain that his eternal Mangekyou Sharingan would evolve again someday. And the direction of that evolution was none other than the Rinnegan, which wields the power of creation. At this moment, the eternal Mangekyou Sharingan in Bibi Dong's eyes could be tentatively called a half-step Rinnegan buzz. The half-step Rinnegan in Bibi Dong's eyes emitted a blood-purple light. The Crimson Nine-Headed Bat King, still inside the blood sphere, immediately lost all ability to resist. Its 9 heads and 9 pairs of eyes all transformed into the appearance of a half-step Rinnegan. The entire Slaughter City seemed to fall silent instantly. Only Bibi Dong's clear and bright voice echoed in the air. Just 2 characters, sacrifice. As soon as the words fell, Yichu immediately sensed an aura locking onto him. A surge of joy rose in his heart. It seemed his 5th spirit ring had been secured. Screech, an extremely sharp, mournful cry suddenly erupted from the Crimson Nine-Headed Bat King's mouth. The piercing sound seemed to make the entire killing city tremble. A blinding red light suddenly spread from the middle head of the Crimson Nine-Headed Bat King, transforming into a red halo that instantly expanded. Wherever the red light passed, everything was dyed blood red, and everything seemed to freeze in that instant, as if time itself had solidified. The entire scene was filled with a mysterious and terrifying atmosphere. Under the blinding red light, the Crimson Nine-Headed Bat King's mournful cries gradually weakened. To Hulina's astonishment, a strange light rose from the Bat King's body, slowly drifting towards Yichu. Yichu stared at the approaching light, then sat down cross-legged, 4 black soul rings beneath him. The blood-red light eventually completely enveloped him. Within this light, Yichu could feel the powerful yet unwilling strength of the Crimson Nine-Headed Bat King. As the light continued to shine, the Crimson Nine-Headed Bat King's body gradually became ethereal. Its power continuously flowed into Yichu's body. Yichu felt a surge of intense energy coursing through his body, as if it would burst his meridians. However, thanks to the blessing of the Goddess of Life and the enhancement of his divine blue-silver Emperor bloodline, his resilience was far greater than before. Yichu focused his mind, striving to guide that powerful force. Hulina and Lingyuan Douluo were deeply shocked by the scene before them. They had never witnessed anything like it before. Hulina's current spirit ring configuration consisted of 1 yellow, 2 purple, and 3 black rings, 6 in total. Her superior rings were all enhanced using whale glue. As for her 4th spirit ring, she was already skilled in mental charm, and with the help of Bibi Dong, she obtained a black 4th spirit ring. Bibi Dong, in the air, seemed shrouded in a mysterious light. Looking at Yichu sitting cross-legged on the ground, her eyes held a hint of inexplicable resentment, her expression complex and unfathomable. Withdrawing her gaze, Bibi Dong descended slowly like an elegant phoenix. Teacher, Hulina's voice was filled with joy and confusion. Her beautiful eyes sparkled with curiosity as she stared intently at Bibi Dong. Bibi Dong nodded gently to her, a tender smile on her face. Then, she turned her gaze to Lingyuan. Her expression became serious as she instructed, Lingyuan, I grant you the authority to manage the city of Slaughter. Now, go and integrate everything here. You will be in charge for the foreseeable future, ensuring stability here. Don't worry, Danger. I'll go right away, Lingyuan replied respectfully. She glanced at Yichu with some curiosity and worry, but without asking further questions, she turned and left, beginning to carry out the task assigned by Bibi Dong. Nana, it's been a long time. Bibi Dong finally turned to look at her disciple whom she had taken in many years ago, her eyes filled with a hint of apology. That apology was for the guilt she had not been able to spend with Hulina for so long. At the same time, there was also a trace of inexplicable jealousy. Teacher. What's going on? Hulina rushed towards Bibi Dong, eager to know. Why was Bibi Dong suddenly here? And why did she have Yichu's martial soul in her eyes? Nana, these things are complicated, and I can't explain them to you right now. Bibi Dong gently ruffled Hulina's short orange hair, her words tinged with apology. As for the relationship between me and Yichu, you'll find out later. Hulina grabbed Bibi Dong's arm, her heart pounding, a sudden bad feeling creeping over her. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 870 Tang Chen Awakens. While Bibi Dong and Hulina reminisced, the sacrifice of the Crimson Nine-Headed Bat King was nearing its end. Yichu sat cross-legged on the ground, his entire body radiating crimson power, with 4 black spirit rings rising and falling beneath him. A crimson 100,000-year-old left leg spirit bone slowly merged into Yichu's body. Suddenly, the crimson power of his spirit body poured downwards, transforming into Yichu's 5th spirit ring outside the 4 black spirit rings. A dazzling, bewitching crimson spirit ring. It spun continuously around Yichu, radiating a powerful pressure. Looking at Yichu's 5th spirit ring, Hulina's eyes were filled with astonishment. She had never seen such a unique way of acquiring spirit rings. At the same time, Hulina also thought of Yichu's women. She seemed to have figured out how Yichu's women obtain their super-aged spirit rings. Since the shape resembling Yichu's martial soul in her teacher's eyes could make a 100,000-year-old spirit beast sacrifice itself, could Yichu's martial soul do the same? In the past, Hulina would have scoffed, declaring it utterly ridiculous. But now, the facts were undeniable: Bibi Dong's bizarre methods, Yichu and the women's advanced spirit rings, and the powerful talents all forced her to believe. Besides, Yichu was now her man, she belonged to him. Hulina was naturally willing to believe that the man who had her beneath him, who had made her succumb to desire, was so special and outstanding, capable of doing what ordinary people couldn't. "Thank you, Yichu," before even opening his eyes, slightly parted his lips to thank the air before him, then slowly opened his eyes to look at the woman standing beside Hulina, a woman so perfect she even amazed him. He appeared to be at level 60, but in reality, even he himself couldn't be certain of his exact cultivation level. After leaving the city of slaughter, he guessed his soul power level was around level 68. But now, after accepting the sacrifice of a 100,000-year-old soul beast, his cultivation level was definitely over level 70. He just didn't know the exact level, since he still needed to hunt for his 6th and 7th soul rings before his soul power could fully manifest. "Are you talking to me?" Looking at Yichu, Bibi Dong's noble and beautiful face showed a hint of displeasure. Her voice unconsciously carried a touch of a little woman's resentment. "You won't even look at me, thank you." Yichu stood up without hesitation and thanked Bibi Dong again. Bibi Dong was silent for a moment, her brows furrowing even deeper. "Why is your personality so different from what Yuha and Lingyan described? Why do you become so rigid around me?" Yichu raised an eyebrow. After Bibi Dong's reminder, he also noticed some changes in himself. He had indeed become much more agile than before. Perhaps it's a side effect of experiencing the city of slaughter. Bibi Dong snorted lightly, turned her head, and a slight smile appeared on her lips. It seemed that Yichu would soon be able to return to the past and fall in love with her. Hulina stared blankly at the scene before her. Her intuition seemed to be coming true. Her teacher and Yichu did indeed have an unknown past, most likely a romantic entanglement. But how could this be? Did her teacher's sister, His Holiness the Pope, say that her teacher had stolen her man? How could that man be Yichu? Would that mean she and her teacher? Hulina's face flushed red, and she dared not think any further. "No need to say thank you later. I'll leave as soon as I get my gift. I'm in a hurry." Bibi Dong didn't care about Hulina's gaze or Yichu's attitude. She had waited for so many years, a little more time wouldn't make a difference. Before she finished speaking, under Hulina's curious gaze, she picked up the azure divine sword and walked towards the king of slaughter lying on the ground. A blood-red light flashed in Yichu's eyes. His expression remained calm, seemingly having guessed Bibi Dong's next move. He didn't care about the gift Bibi Dong mentioned. He couldn't find a reason for her to harm him anyway. Yichu's eternal kaleidoscope, looking at Tang Chen lying on the ground, clearly sensed the rapid recovery of his power. Whoosh, the tip of Bibi Dong's azure divine sword dragged across the ground, adding an air of deadly intent. "Old bastard from the Clear Sky sect, a failure of the divine trial, how long are you going to lie there? This doesn't seem like the style of the strongest limit Douluo on land." Hearing Bibi Dong's words, Hulina was still somewhat confused, but Yichu was already standing beside her, shielding half of her body behind him. He could sense that Tang Chen was much stronger than Jin Daolio at this moment. Tang Chen had already passed the first 8 trials of the Azure Divine Trial, and his body, after being modified by divine power, was worthy of being called a demigod. If Bibi Dong were to fight him, even the aftershocks might be more than Hulina could withstand. "Yichu?" Hulina had just grabbed Yichu's arm when an extremely hoarse voice rang out in the dilapidated palace. It was as if someone who had been mute for over 10 years had suddenly been released. "Hairhead! Little girl, As a newcomer, don't you know how to respect your seniors? This old man just wanted to rest. Before the words were finished, the king of slaughter, who had been lying on the ground, slowly rose to his feet. His body was covered in blood. Under the gaze of Yu and the others, the king of slaughter's physical condition changed. The sword-shaped blood-red demonic mark on his forehead seemed to come alive, its red light flowing and gradually intensifying, giving his body a layer of reddish glow. The king of slaughter's originally pale face also began to change. The white was gradually replaced by an unhealthy flush, and his wings on his back shattered inch by inch, turning into ashes and disappearing. His hair also gradually turned from red to black, and the same change appeared in his eyes. The only thing on his body that still retained its red color was the demonic mark on his forehead. Yichu's eyes blazed with a blood-red light. Hulina's eyes flashed with horror. She clearly sensed that although the blood-red color on the king of slaughter opposite her had faded and his wings were shattered, the aura emanating from him was increasing exponentially, seemingly without end. The red light protecting his body also began to overflow, bringing an extremely powerful sense of oppression to Yichu and Hulina. Yichu even summoned the exoskeleton of Susanoo. "Don't try to act tough in front of me, showing off your insignificant power," Bibidong said casually. With that, she lightly swung her blood-red longsword, completely destroying the red light surrounding the King of Slaughter. Chapter 871 Demigod vs. Quasi-God. The crimson light receded. The King of Slaughter's eyes brightened. His pupils changed from blood-red to a deep, unfathomable black. His face also seemed to have changed somewhat. He still looked like a middle-aged man, but he had become much more handsome. All the evil had been replaced by a sense of weariness. His black hair moved without wind, and he stood there, no longer the frail figure of the King of Slaughter before, but as solid and imposing as a mountain. However, when he looked at Bibidong, his eyes were filled with solemnity. "Little girl, you are a force to be reckoned with. I didn't expect you to have come this far. Are these your last words?" Bibidong continued to approach Tang Chen, the crimson light on her body swirling behind her, transforming into a giant crimson spider. Tang Chen frowned. "Since you have initiated the 9 trials of Azuro, you should understand that without your intervention, my already decaying body will collapse on its own. I know, but I need your memories. I want to see your Haoshin Sex proud great Sumeru hammer." Bibidong slowly raised the Azure divine sword in her hand. The great Sumeru hammer, Tang Chen's eyes flashed with a sharp light as he stared at Bibidong and Yichu and Hulina behind her. "Are you from the Spirit Hall? The Clear Sky sect has already stood against the entire continent, even against the God Realm," Bibidong said calmly, pointing her Azure divine sword at Tang Chen, and immediately charged towards him. "What do you mean by that?" Tang Chen's eyes showed confusion, but Bibidong would not answer him. "The dead don't need to know so much." Bibidong charged towards Tang Chen like an arrow, her Azure divine sword pointing directly at his chest. As the Azure divine sword swung in Bibidong's hand, the patterns on the sword began to ripple out like evil spirits, ferocious and terrifying. From the end of the hilt all the way to the tip was like a small blood-red sun, bursting with red light, spirit, and essence becoming one. Body and sword became one. Although there were no moves mentioned. But Bibidong's spiritual power and the aura of the Azure divine sword were completely locked onto Tang Chen. "It seems I still have to fight to the death." Tang Chen's eyes were filled with helplessness. He was originally a dying man, and before leaving, he wanted to go to Seagold Island to see it. But now he changed his mind. He had to leave this place. If the Haoshin sect was doing something wrong, he had to stop them. Red light surged out from Tang Chen's hand, which had returned from a claw shape to a large palm. Having just completed the 8th trial, he was completely unaffected by the Azure divine sword's lock. At this moment, the aura emanating from his entire body had become indescribably powerful. A red phantom filled with infinite killing intent flashed behind him, and the red light in his palm fiercely condensed into a hammer shape. A gigantic red hammer, shining with countless beautiful magical patterns. Strangely, after appearing, the hammer quickly changed again. In the blink of an eye, the hammer seemed to melt, transforming into a blood-red giant sword more than 2 meters long. Tang Chen gripped his sword with both hands, advancing instead of retreating. His entire body was bathed in a crimson light. The heavy sword, with the force of a firestorm, rose from below to meet Bibidong's thrust. From Yuhuan and Hulina's perspective, all they could see were 2 blinding flashes of bloodlight colliding. Boom! The crimson light instantly merged and then erupted violently. Hulina felt an immense, overwhelming energy, like a landslide or a tsunami, rushing towards her. All she could do was curl up as close to Yichu as possible in his arms. Yichu's eternal kaleidoscope loomed crimson. Skeletons, meridians, skin, and the Tengu mask layered upon each other. The next moment, the Tengu mask exploded. Susanoo was flung into the air like a bullet, crashing into the wall and embedding itself within. Even while still in Yichu's arms, Hulina nearly lost all consciousness. Boom! In the killing town, on that small mountain, a sound like an earthquake suddenly resounded. The mountain cracked. A crimson pillar of light shot into the sky. Like a volcanic eruption, the mountain was blasted open, revealing the slaughter city to be right beneath it. The energy fluctuations from Bibidong and Tang Chen's battle didn't spread far, only about 300 meters in diameter. However, within that 300-meter radius, everything vanished into thin air. The Slaughter King's palace had disappeared without a trace, and the Hell Slaughter Arena was in ruins, seemingly half of its area evaporated. A nearly 100-meter deep circular crater appeared at the mountain top. Streaks of blood-red light, like swimming dragons, shot into the sky from the crater, their crimson glow dimming in the air. By the time it reached the top, it had turned completely black. Even so, it still caused a violent roar within the Slaughter City. There was no dust. Above the Hell Slaughter Arena, one blood-red figure was clearly visible, while the crimson of another figure had faded. Tang Chen's body had been slammed into the crater wall behind him when the Azure Divine Swords clashed. Even the hardest rock couldn't stop his body from sinking inward, a full 5 meters before it finally stabilized. But blood was gushing out. His internal organs felt as if they had been turned inside out, his soul power and mental strength suppressed like never before. He had never suffered such a severe injury. The sensation of that instant was clearly imprinted in Tang Chen's mind. The power his opponent unleashed far surpassed his own. The crimson light, filled with the purest killing intent, was in no way inferior to his own. It even completely suppressed him during the collision. Tang Chen's all-out attack was easily shattered by his opponent. Meanwhile, the change in Bibidong was merely a slight retreat, her purple robe still spotless. Furthermore, Bibidong now held the Azure Divine Sword in each hand. That power that annihilated all matter was the result of the explosive energy generated by the collision of two super artifacts, a demigod and a quasi-god. Just one collision. Tang Chen's body, on the verge of collapse, was completely exhausted. Even the Azure Divine Sword had been knocked from his hand. Since his childhood when he was cultivating soul power, Tang Chen had never experienced such a crushing defeat. Even when he fought against Jindaoliu and Poseidon, he hadn't felt this way. It's over. Bibidong held the two Azure Divine Swords, her eternal Mangekyou Sharingan, now shimmering with a slight ripple, reappeared in her eyes. Behind her, a giant blood-red spider with two spear-like legs directly pulled Tang Chen, who was paralyzed in the rock wall, out. Cough cough, Tang Chen was on the verge of death. Blood constantly spilling from his mouth. Chapter 872 vanished into ashes. I never expected the gap to be so huge. Tang Chen looked at Bibidong, who appeared as a young girl, his eyes filled with deep resentment. Whoosh, Bibidong didn't give him a chance to speak. The eternal Mangekyou Sharingan, about to evolve into the Rinnegan, shone with a blinding crimson light. Yichu's fourth soul skill, Martial Sun Illumination, was activated. It allowed him to view the opponent's memories without their awareness, delete them while they were unconscious, and edit their memories to a certain extent. Tang Chen was stunned. A crimson light appeared in his eyes, and his memories of many years seemed to flash before his eyes. But Bibidong had no interest in those trivial matters. She only wanted to obtain the great Sumeru hammer of the clear sky sect. Whoosh, Yichu appeared in the air, carrying Hulina. The terrifying aftershock of the attack had shattered the Tengu mask of the Susanoo, but it hadn't harmed Yichu and Hulina inside. At most, they had suffered some shock damage. This minor injury was nothing to Yichu, who had received the blessing of the goddess of life. He had also finished treating Hulina's injuries. Hulina nestled in Yichu's arms, her face pale. Looking at the destruction caused by her teacher's battle with the peerless Douluo from the Clear Sky sect, her eyes were filled with lingering fear. Below, Ling Yuan also stared in shock at Bibidong, who stood tall in the sky. Yichu, watching Bibidong's actions, realized that his earlier guess was completely correct. The great Sumeru hammer he had been longing for would soon be his. PFFT, Tang Chen coughed up another mouthful of blood, the color draining rapidly from his face. He looked like a candle flickering in the wind, hanging by a thread. "What did you do to me?" The bloodlust in Tang Chen's eyes faded, and he looked at Bibi Dong with utter calm. "Can't you sense it? I just looked at your memories." The bloodlust in Bibi Dong's eyes faded, and a cold smile, along with a hint of smugness, appeared on her lips. "My memories?" A hint of defeat appeared on Tang Chen's face. He hadn't expected the difference between those who had both passed the first 8 trials of the Azure God exam to be so vast. Tang Chen could feel his power, vitality, and divine power being devoured by the blood-red spider spears behind Bibi Dong. He couldn't even self-destruct, he could only wait to die. But thinking of what Bibi Dong had said before, the Haoshan sect, the sect that had given him life, raised him, and brought him to its peak, was about to be destroyed. Tang Chen's eyes were filled with resentment. His face was filled with melancholy, and his once straight spine, which had always faced everything with domineering arrogance, was now slightly hunched. "Is the Haoshan sect really beyond saving? Can't you really spare my children?" Tang Chen looked up at Bibi Dong, his eyes filled with pleading. At this moment, Tang Chen, who had just broken free from the control of the Crimson Nine-Headed Bat King, had already turned his jet-black hair gray. Under the devouring power of the 8 spider spears behind Bibi Dong, even his flesh and blood were slowly withering away, and his entire body rapidly transitioned from middle age to old age, with age spots and even lividity appearing on his skin. "The Haoshan sect will not be destroyed," Bibi Dong said calmly, not taking the dying Tang Chen seriously. As she spoke, her clear, cold purple eyes looked in Yi Chu's direction, with a hint of resentment in them. She said softly, "Yu He is my good sister, and that guy is practically your grandson-in-law. For Yu He's sake, the Haoshan sect will not be destroyed." "What?" Before Yi Chu could react, Hu Liner looked at her teacher in shock. Were they really going to be ridden by Yi Chu from now on? Yu He, that girl. Tang Chen's hair began to thin, and he looked old and frail, his speech already somewhat incoherent. His cloudy eyes looked at Yi Chu. A bitter smile slowly appeared on his face. He never expected that Yu He and this incredibly powerful girl in front of him would actually fall for such a young man. However, he also saw Yi Chu's talent, which likely indicated he was destined for godhood. Meanwhile, looking at the 2 identical Azure divine swords in Bibi Dong's hands, Tang Chen, unlike the Crimson Nine-Headed Bat King, couldn't use the power of the Azure divine swords. He could sense that the 2 swords possessed identical auras, and he even had some control over the sword in Bibi Dong's hand. A glint of light shone in Tang Chen's eyes, and a bold guess formed in his mind, but it was no longer important. Tang Chen looked at Yi Chu and said dryly, "I hope you can treat Yu He well. Yu He is currently undergoing the 9 trials of the Sea God on Seagoat Island," Yi Chu told Tang Chen, meeting his gaze. "Ha ha ha!" A joyful, relieved smile suddenly bloomed on Tang Chen's face, and tears even welled up in his eyes. He had originally worried that Tang Yu He, with only level 9 soul power, wouldn't receive much attention even as one of the young man's women, but Yi Chu had unexpectedly brought him such a pleasant surprise. The Tang family's Haoshan sect was secure. Secure. "Thank you," Tang Chen, barely able to speak, thanked Yi Chu. He didn't think Yi Chu would deceive a dying man like him. "You really should thank him. Without him, Yu He wouldn't have broken through to this level. Without him, Yu He wouldn't have obtained the key to the Sea God's inheritance." PFFT, Bibi Dong's words fell. She manipulated the 8 spider lances behind her, completely piercing Tang Chen's body. When she pulled them out again, Tang Chen's life force was exhausted, like autumn leaves swept away by the wind. His withered body fell downwards. Tang Chen looked at Yi Chu, staring for a long time, before his body slowly turned to ashes and dissipated in the air. Yet he still heard Bibi Dong's voice. Looking at Yi Chu, a kind smile appeared in her eyes. It seemed his guess wasn't so far off. This young man brought a miracle. Whoosh, a breeze carrying the stench of blood swept through the city of slaughter, and Tang Chen's body completely dissipated, dust to dust, ashes to ashes, leaving only his clothes scattered on the ground. Yi Chu looked at Tang Chen's clothes, a hint of emotion in his eyes. Tang Chen, the strongest soul master on land among the 3-limit Douluo of this era, had actually died so quietly in the city of slaughter, without even a soul to pay his respects. Whoosh! Thinking of this, Yi Chu's divine power began to circulate, and he collected Tang Chen's belongings. Teacher, Hu Liner looked at Bibi Dong, who had put away her 8 spider lances and was approaching Yi Chu, and called out softly, her eyes filled with deep confusion. Nana, go down first, don't disturb your master and your grandmaster, huh? Hearing Bibi Dong's words, Hulina's face was full of strange expressions. Chapter 873. Remember this taste. Bibi Dong, her expression aloof yet undeniably authoritative, gently raised her fair, jade-like hand and waved it at Hulina without a second thought. Yichu instantly sensed that the soft body in his arms was being pulled away by an invisible force, as if about to float away. After a brief hesitation, Yichu slowly released his embrace. Nana, go downstairs and wait for me for a while, okay? Hulina bit her lip. She looked up at her teacher, then at Yichu. In front of these two people who were most important to her, she felt somewhat helpless. She knew she couldn't know anything. She could only obediently nod. Bibi Dong waved her exquisitely embroidered purple sleeves again. A gentle force surged forth. Hulina felt as if she were walking on clouds, lightly flying towards the location of Lingyuan Douluo below. Yichu stood quietly in the air, his clothes fluttering in the wind. His blood-red eternal kaleidoscopes were already closed. He watched Bibi Dong gradually approach. From Bibi Dong's seemingly frail yet seemingly boundless body, he could clearly feel a powerful pressure. Thank you, Yichu said softly, watching Bibi Dong approach. He only uttered these two words. In truth, he knew in his heart that he and Bibi Dong were not familiar with each other. There seemed to be an invisible veil between them. Even though he had many questions he wanted to ask, he knew that Bibi Dong might not tell him. No need to be polite, I'll take the gift myself, Bibi Dong said softly. Her voice was as clear and melodious as a silver bell, like a gently flowing spring. In this city of slaughter filled with malevolence and death, it was a breath of fresh air, seemingly able to wash away all dust and bloodshed. Her eyes held an unfathomable meaning as she lightly strode through the air, continuing to approach Yichu. Once Bibi Dong was close enough, Yichu didn't need to activate his Sharingan to see her face clearly. Bibi Dong stood on the air, her purple robes fluttering gently in the wind. The purple hues resembled flowing clouds, exuding an aura of nobility. Her long, crimson hair cascaded down like a waterfall, standing out brilliantly against the dark red backdrop of the killing city. Each strand seemed to shimmer with a flowing luster, like a crimson river under a starry night. Her purple eyes were deep and bright, as if holding an endless sea of stars. Yi Huan could clearly sense the complex emotions in Bibi Dong's gaze when she looked at him. There was a hint of reminiscence in her eyes, as if she were seeing certain memories of the past through Yichu. These memories might be past aspirations, or warm fragments sealed away by time. A sense of longing spread through her eyes, as if she were reminiscing about a beautiful, bygone era, or perhaps a familiar yet distant figure. And that love, like wisps of smoke, slowly rose from the depths of her eyes. Her gaze was gentle and tender, filled with deep affection. A fragrant breeze wafted by, and Bibi Dong stood before Yichu. She tilted her head slightly, silently gazing at him without a word. The two azure divine swords in her hands hung naturally, not falling, but miraculously floating in the air, as if held up by a gentle force. Yichu looked at Bibi Dong, so close to him. He could smell her body fragrance, elegant, fresh, and vibrant. Under Yichu's curious gaze, bloodlust appeared in Bibi Dong's eyes. A black six-pointed star unfolded, within which a purple three-leaf windmill turned, faint purple ripples spreading outwards. Bibi Dong had reopened her half-step samsara eye. Don't resist, Bibi Dong said softly, tilting her head back. Yichu nodded gently. He knew Bibi Dong intended to use the martial sun illumination to share Tang Chen's memories with him. Bibi Dong caught a whiff of the natural fragrance of the blue-silver emperor emanating from Yichu. Her eyes held a hint of longing, and her heart a flicker of greed. Bibi Dong gently pursed her luscious red lips and couldn't help but raise her delicate hand. Yichu raised an eyebrow, watching Bibi Dong's soft hand grasp his collar. Before the strangeness in his eyes could even surface, Bibi Dong had already tiptoed forward, pressing her fiery red lips to Yichu's. A refreshing sweetness surged forth. Yichu was stunned for a moment, but didn't refuse. Already parched in the city of slaughter, he even subconsciously responded slightly, gently raising his hand to support Bibi Dong's slender waist. Bibi Dong captured Yichu's lips, directly capturing his pink tongue as if savoring candy, swirling it around. Yichu frowned slightly. His cheeks seemed to be filled with rolling beads, his throat bobbing uncontrollably. Gulp. Bibi Dong's elegant breath traveled from her lips straight to his hardened lungs. Yichu felt completely filled, unable to utter a sound, his mouth unable to move. He was afraid of biting Bibi Dong. He could only make a few nasal sounds through his nose. Bibi Dong gently curled around Yichu, greedily savoring the long-lost taste. Her soft body gently rubbed against him. At this moment, Yichu's physical attributes were naturally no match for Bibi Dong, who was already a quasi-god. Gradually, drool spilled from the corners of Yichu's mouth, its origin unclear. Bibi Dong's face flushed. Her eyes were somewhat intoxicated. She hadn't tasted this flavor for countless years. It was still the same as before, just as skillful. A sour feeling rose in Bibi Dong's heart, and she became even more proactive in her pursuit. She playfully swirled within Yichu's mouth. Yichu's eyes widened slightly. Bibi Dong's eyes seemed to hold 1,000 words, yet beneath her trembling long eyelashes, she hesitated to speak. Yichu met those half-step Rinnegan eyes. Memories belonging to Tang Chen, the cultivation method of the Great Sumeru Hammer, the 9 absolute techniques of Haoshin, the chaotic cloak hammer technique, and the Great Sumeru Hammer's profound secret technique, ring explosion, all surged towards Yichu. Below, Hulina, having anticipated this, widened her eyes in surprise. As the memory reception was complete, Bibi Dong and Yichu's lips temporarily parted. Pop. The sound was like a wine bottle being opened. Bibi Dong, her face flushed, reluctantly released Yichu, exhaling a warm, fragrant breath. Yichu slightly lowered his head, gazing at her noble and beautiful face. He breathed through his open mouth, his throat moving silently. Bibi Dong's breathing was equally rapid. She retracted the pink fish she had spat out, unable to resist swallowing the sweetness between her lips. Her face flushed a hot, blood red. Her amethyst-like, alluring eyes were captivating. Yichu, remember this taste. When you go back and find it. Chapter 874 Hints to the Third Trial of Destruction. As the words fell, Bibi Dong looked at Yichu. A faint blush graced her delicate face. The corners of her lips curved slightly upward, forming a playful arc. She gazed at Yichu quietly, as if nothing else in the world mattered at that moment, only the person before her could stir her heartstrings. Yichu met Bibi Dong's gaze, pursed his red lips, and savored the lingering feeling she left behind. He nodded gently. I remember. I will do what I should do. Bibi Dong smiled brightly. That's good, Yichu. I should go now. Perhaps when we meet again, you will have reached the end of your soul master journey. Here's a little hint. Your third trial is in the far north. The far north. Yichu's expression was strange. Apart from a few ferocious beasts, there didn't seem to be anything of interest in the far north, right? Could his third trial of destruction be related to ferocious beasts? Before Yichu could think further, Bibi Dong handed him the azure divine sword. Yichu obediently took the azure divine sword into his hands. It felt heavy, and a power seemed to surge into his body. At the same time, the divine trial mark on Yichu's forehead also seemed to possess a power, resisting the azure divine sword while simultaneously flowing towards it, as if confirming something. While he pondered this, the azure divine sword in Bibi Dong's hand suddenly emitted wisps of crimson power. Strange fluctuations spread outwards. A black vortex slowly appeared, seemingly tearing through space itself. Its interior was pitch black and indistinct. Yichu temporarily ignored the energy within his body. He opened his eternal kaleidoscope, which seemed to lead to a cave. The power permeating it didn't resemble soul power, but rather some other form of force. Was it the Azure secret realm? Or some other place outside of Douluo continent? Yichu only knew that space was very far away from him. He had no ability to open such a thick spatial passage. Yichu didn't know, and Bibi Dong didn't explain. She smiled at Yichu again, a beautiful smile that seemed to carry expectation. Bibi Dong slowly turned and walked towards the spatial tunnel. A melodious voice echoed. Complete your divine trial as soon as possible. On the path of the divine trial, you will remember me and Yuhu and the others. The echo lingered. In no time, Bibi Dong completely disappeared from the city of slaughter, and the spatial vortex completely closed. If it weren't for the surrounding chaos, no one would believe that a battle at the pinnacle of Soul Master level had just taken place here. At this moment, Yichu's power seemed to have been confirmed, and he held the Azure Divine Sword in his hand. The voice of the God of Destruction resounded in his mind. Second trial of the 9 trials of destruction, slay the King of Slaughter and seize the Azure Divine Sword. Time limit, 1 year, completed, reward. 10% destruction origin affinity, right arm thunder beast soul bone upgraded to 100,000 years. The majestic voice resounded. Yichu unconsciously activated his eternal Mangekyou Sharingan and looked at his right arm. Golden power surged towards the 75,000-year-old Thunder Beast's soul bone. Yichu's right arm was crackling with lightning, a tingling sensation emanating from it. Whoosh! 5 spirit rings appeared beneath Yichu's feet, a dark red glow. Yichu could feel his spirit power had increased again. He was now at the Spirit Saint stage. Though he didn't know his exact level. His greatest gain from arriving in the City of Slaughter wasn't the God of Slaughter domain, but rather the help from Bibi Dong, the cultivation method for the Great Sumeru Hammer, and the rare 100,000-year Spirit Ring. Given the Sharingan's inherent characteristic of granting 2 skills per ring, the 100,000-year Spirit Ring didn't grant Yichu any more skills, he still only had 2. Yichu even felt that after obtaining his 7th Spirit Ring, he might gain 2 additional skills besides his martial soul true body. Yichu's 5th spirit skill in his left eye was called Yellow Spring Zirasika. When developed to its limit, it could tear through space and open the gates of hell. However, given Yichu's current level, its use was naturally still somewhat clumsy. Currently, Yichu can only summon and control the soul beasts that become his soul rings, and their stay in the mortal realm is very limited. After summoning the spirit of a particular soul ring, that soul ring becomes temporarily unusable. Of course, the age of those soul beasts is linked to the age of Yichu's soul rings. For example, Yichu's first soul ring initially came from a 1,000-year-old anaconda, but now that he summons it to assist in battle, its age corresponds to that of his first soul ring, an anaconda over 20,000 years old. Simultaneously, after summoning the anaconda, Yichu's first soul ring becomes unusable, and his dual divine powers are restricted. After the anaconda disappears, the soul rings return to normal. Yichu currently has no way to overcome these limitations. Perhaps when his cultivation level increases further, or when his Sharingan reaches its peak, these soul skills will change. His right eye's 5th soul skill is called Heavenly Rock Cave, a skill that protects the soul and spirit, granting Yichu immunity to all skills that affect the soul. As for the mental attacks of a soul master, Yichu believed he would be fine, but he didn't know if this move would work against a deity. Aside from these 2 5th soul skills, the left leg bone of the 100,000-year-old Crimson 9-headed Bat King also granted Yichu 2 decent skills. One was blood sacrifice, which allowed him to convert his own blood into soul power when his soul power was depleted, or to amplify all his attributes through blood sacrifice. At its maximum, he could sacrifice all his own blood, achieving a 100% amplification of all attributes. Of course, after using it, he would be gone. The other skill complemented the flight skill of the Blue-Silver Emperor's right leg bone, both being flight abilities. With these 2 100,000-year-old soul bones flight skills, Yichu felt his speed might rival that of the Agile clan. Crackling sounds. The sound of Yichu's right hand subsided. The 100,000-year-old Thunder Beast's right arm bone was complete. Besides the original skill, Thousand Birds, it gained a thunder armor, stimulating all the cells in his body, increasing his land speed, defense, and so on. Yichu completed the second trial. In the Divine Realm atop the dome, although Yichu and Hulina had spent over a year in the City of Slaughter, only a day and a half had passed in the Divine Realm. In the tranquil and peaceful Forest of Life, beneath a colossal ancient tree, a goddess clad in a water-green dress, radiating vitality, continued collecting the essence of the ancient tree of life, paving the way for the successor to the position of God of life. A faint smile always graced her face, veiled in a soft golden light. That vibrant aura was truly unforgettable, and made one feel exceptionally close. Huh? Something's not right with this kid, a figure sitting cross-legged beneath the ancient tree of life suddenly uttered in surprise. Chapter 875 The Third Trial of Destruction. Beneath the ancient tree of life sat a figure clad in a large purple cloak. The cloak concealed him entirely, revealing only 2 flickering red lights within it. His face remained obscured. Within the cloak emanated an aura of profound and terrifying power. Yet, the figure was clearly visible. Beneath the cloak was a man who appeared to be in his 30s. He had short, dark red hair that stood upright like steel needles, and his eyes flashed with red light. He was extremely handsome. Hearing the voice of the god of destruction, the goddess of life asked curiously, "Little Purple, what's wrong? That kid actually obtained the Azure Divine Sword so quickly. His speed in completing the second divine trial surprised me. Logically speaking, his strength shouldn't be at this level," the god of destruction thought with a strange feeling. The goddess of life said helplessly, "Wasn't it your idea to seize the Azure Divine Sword? Now that you've got it, you don't seem very happy. That's not it. The god of destruction shook his head slightly. I'm naturally quite happy, but it seems I underestimated him a bit. As soon as he finished speaking, the god of destruction cast his gaze downwards, his eyes seemingly piercing through the divine realm, through the atmosphere, directly landing on the Douluo continent, in the city of slaughter. This shouldn't be happening. How could the Asura's inheritance site be destroyed like this? The god of destruction frowned. The goddess of life also looked downwards, her beautiful brows slightly furrowed, and she advised again, Little Purple, can you please stop going against Asura? Don't worry, Little Green, I know what I'm doing. I can't waste all my assessments on Asura. Since this kid is so strong, let's make his third divine exam more difficult. The god of destruction pondered for a moment. Thinking of those restless soul beasts who still dreamed of becoming gods, he immediately had an idea. Inside the city of slaughter, Yichu floated in the air, having just finished organizing his newly acquired abilities. He sensed a gaze descending from the dome above. He couldn't help but look up. Is it the god of destruction? Yichu murmured to himself. The next instant, the third of the 9 points of light representing the 9 divine trials between his brows finally lit up. After the first 2 points had lit up, the majestic voice echoed in Yichu's mind. 9 trials of destruction. Third trial, obtained a 6th spirit ring at the level of a ferocious beast. Time limit, 1 year. Hearing the contents of his third divine trial, Yichu's eyes widened in surprise. He immediately recalled the hint Bibi Dong had given him before leaving. It seemed he really needed to make a trip to the far north. Perhaps she had left a backup plan there, and there might be some unexpected surprises. But before that, he still needed to send Hulina back to Spirit City, then return to the 7 treasure glazed tile school, and then go to Seagood Island to see if they had completed the trials of the 7 sacred pillars of the Seagood. Shui Yuir and the other girls should have finished. It's time to bring them back from there and help them acquire their spirit rings. With Shen Wei's help, traveling will be much easier. Yichu's body slowly landed, and as soon as he touched the ground, Hulina followed. Yichu nodded slightly, looking at Hulina and Lingyuan Douluo, and said softly, things here are almost resolved. I'll send you back to Wuhan City now. Lingyuan Douluo shook her head. Yichu, I won't go back. I still need to manage the slaughter city here. Yichu is slightly taken aback. He glanced at the slaughter city, which was in a mess. Many of the fallen ones were still there. The king of slaughter was dead, and no one was watching over them. If they were allowed to go outside, it would indeed be troublesome. Well, then thank you for your trouble. Yichu nodded and didn't say anything more. Just don't forget me. Lingyuan stared at Yichu with a slightly coquettish look. Yichu didn't hold back, directly wrapping his arms around her waist and gently kissing her spirited face. Don't worry, I won't forget you. That's good. Lingyuan's face flushed, a sweetness she had never felt before welling up in her heart. Nana, let's go now. Yichu looked at Hulina and extended his hand to her. Okay, Hulina nodded, placing her delicate hand in Yichu's palm, and looked at Lingyuan. Sister Lingyuan, take care. Yes, Nana, you should rest well when you get back. Having too much killing intent isn't a good thing, and Yichu too, you should too. Lingyuan smiled and nodded, softly reminding her. Hulina smiled slightly. Don't worry, Sister Lingyuan, I know all this, it's good that you know. Lingyuan smiled, watching Yichu and Hulina's bodies begin to curl up slightly. Goodbye. Yichu softly bid farewell to Lingyuan. Lingyuan nodded slightly, raising her jade hand to gently wave to Yichu. Space distorted. Yichu and Hulina's figures completely disappeared from the city of slaughter. The sun shone brightly outside Martial Soul City. Space distorted, revealing traces of blood. Yichu and Hulina's figures slowly reappeared, looking at the towering city walls in the distance. Yichu didn't intend to go in. After all, there was a mad woman, Pope Bibi Dong inside, whose aura was worlds apart from the one in the city of slaughter, wielding the Azure divine sword. Yichu held Hulina's waist and whispered, Nana, I'll see you off here. I hope that next time we meet, you can completely control the killing intent within you. Don't worry, Yichu, I won't let you down. Be careful, Hulina whispered a reminder. As soon as she finished speaking, she tiptoed and kissed Yichu's lips. The two had already crossed the final line, trying various positions and tricks, so Yichu naturally wouldn't refuse. He captured Hulina's lips with his own. Their breaths mingled, their lips and teeth locked, a tender embrace, Yichu's Adam's apple bobbing. His restless hands roamed over her full, firm body, Hulina letting out soft moans, her face flushed, offering no resistance to Yichu's hand on her lap, her cherry lips releasing a warm, moist stream. After a long while, their lips parted, a few glistening drops of saliva escaping her lips. Hulina's soft body slumped in Yichu's arms, her natural allure now even more irresistible. Yichu suppressed his burning desire, pursing his own lips. Once Hulina had recovered slightly, he softly said, "Nana, I should go." "Okay, goodbye." Hulina obediently stood up, kissing Yichu's cheek again. Yichu didn't hesitate any longer, activating his eternal kaleidoscope, his kamui swirling, his figure slowly disappearing from the spot. Only his echo remained. "Goodbye, please give my regards to His Holiness the Pope." "Yes, I will." Hulina pressed her slightly damp legs together, her delicate hands bracing against a tree. She couldn't stop missing Yichu even though she had just left him. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.